Our Township Board meeting, East Bay Charter Township, to order, and we'll begin with the pledge. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, thanks for being here on this spring day, and don't call me if it snows tomorrow, telling me I jinxed it, but we'll do roll call attendance, Ann?
Sure. Bartlett.
Yes.
Lyle.
Yes.
M. Cortade.
Here.
Walters.
Present.
S. Cortade.
Here.
Friend.
Yes.
Noted that Matt Cook is absent and excused.
Okay, very good, thank you. And on the agenda, we'll review the agenda for conflict of interest. We have just some updates from accountant, engineering firm, some internal reports from planning and zoning and action items. And then we have the Bryan application with the road commission, the Brown Bridge Quiet Area expansion presentation, tribal grant consideration, and the MPO presentation, and then the job description, buildings and grounds. So any conflict of interest with that? Okay, seeing none, we'll go to approval of the agenda. And a couple things I would note. One is that since this went out, it has been updated, but since this went out, we do have budget amendments on here to review as well. You also have the updated short-term rental moratorium extension. The only thing that's been changed is we've taken it, well, we'll go into it, but it's from 3 to 4 months, and then we've corrected the dates of when things take effect. And so those aren't, the budget amendments are the only thing that have really been added. And I will ask under D, under job description, that we just change that to the general category of staffing update, because I also wanted to, well, that will include that job description, but I just wanted to mention one other item for you as well. So with that, is there a motion for the agenda?
I make a motion to approve the agenda as presented.
Okay, motion by Bartlett, support by Lyle to approve the agenda as presented and updated.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, that's right, that's right. Okay, very good. All in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed by no? All right, excellent. We have an agenda. So with that, we'll go to public comment. Ann, do you want to read the rules for public comment?
Certainly. The purpose of the public comment is to give members of the public an opportunity to express their views and opinions to the members of this board. To maintain order and ensure fairness to every speaker, the following rules must be followed during public comment. Speakers will approach the podium and introduce themselves by stating their name and address, and then proceed to make their comment. Each speaker will be limited to 3 minutes and is only allowed to speak once on the same matter. Communication previously emailed to the board is not necessarily to be read aloud. Public comment time may not be given to another member of the public. Any arrangement for speaking on behalf of others must be arranged prior to the meeting. When your time is at 2 minutes 30 seconds, you'll be alerted with a yellow signal to wrap up your comment, and at 3 minutes, you'll be alerted with a red signal, and the chair will ask you to conclude your comments.
Very good, thank you. At this point in time, is there anyone who has any public comment that they would like to make? Go ahead. You can go right ahead, even though the computer is there. How are you tonight?
Good evening, everyone. My name is John Jury. I live at 1615 East River Road here in Traverse City. First, I'd like to say thank you to the board for making some of the short-term rental license holders whole again with your moratorium changes and language. I know you guys have worked hard, and Preston's worked hard for that. I want to take the rest of my time to discuss the 1 in 7 rule, as I'm calling it. Last week we had there was a lot of conversation and a term being used called the revolving door with the implementation of a 7-day rule over the current 4-day rule. The revolving door is going to happen no matter what, whether it's a renter, a guest, a relative, or even a homeowner. People are going to come and go throughout the day into any given home. Reducing the availability of us being able to rent twice in a 7-day period is going to greatly impact us for a couple of reasons. And this is not a monetary thing. I know that a lot of people have talked about profits. Most of us really just break even with the rentals. So what's going to happen is 87% of hotel rooms in Grand Traverse County are rented an average of 3 nights. For my rental itself, I have 94% of my guests come for 3 nights, 4 calendar days. I understand that I can have people still stay for 4 days, but I can't rent until the 7th day. That is going to impact me to the point that I can no longer break even on being able to rent and cover my costs. So what's going to happen to accommodate that is I'm going to extend my season. I'm going to start renting earlier in the spring and later in the fall, where right now I really just rent during about a 100-day period, from a little before Memorial Day to a little after Labor Day. So I ask you, please ask yourselves, what will the 1 in 7 day rule fix for the people that are having problems with the STRs that are really on top of them? And is that going to fix the comings and goings of people? Because I don't think that it will. I know you guys are putting a lot of time into the revision of the ordinance, and I thank you for that time. We have really kind of stepped back from all the other changes, and we support the other changes. We just simply ask, please give us and keep the 4-day rule. I appreciate your time this evening. I wish I could stay the rest of the time, but I'm short, and I appreciate my 3 minutes. Thank you.
Thanks, John. Go ahead, sir. And if there was anyone else too, they can just come up and stand behind you getting ready to make public comment. How are you?
Very good. My name is Fred Schmidt. I live at 3900 Manchester Road. I have an STR at 3334 Columbine Court. I'm one of the 20-plus owners that's waiting for our licenses to be issued. Before I proceed, I'd just like to acknowledge, as this gentleman did now, the difficult and excellent work that you guys have done on STRs. It really shows dedication, commitment, and service to our township, and you guys are all appreciated, really, very much so. I would like to ask the township to please issue our licenses sooner rather than later. Most people that are vacationing here this summer have already made their plans, so the window for bookings is getting narrower and narrower. Our family has a rather large summer tax bill coming up that's a non-homestead rate, and delaying the issuance of our license will cause a significant hardship to our family. I know this is not the township's problem, it's mine. However, it seems like there would be no harm to issue these soon, and it would greatly relieve the anxiety that we are under, not knowing how much longer we will have to wait. We imagine the others that are waiting have the similar concerns. As a resident of East Bay Township, I'm grateful for your continued efforts in ensuring that our community is well managed and that the needs of its residents are met. Thank you so much for hearing my plea. And Preston deserves a raise.
Thank you very much. Hello, Ralph. How are you?
Good evening. My name is Ralph Bednars. I reside in East Bay Township on Rainy Lake, and I'm the current president of the Rainy Lake Association. Once again, I want to thank the Township's Planning Department for the work they are doing to update and enhance the zoning regulations, especially as they pertain to the Forest Lakes area. We also want to express our support for the proposed Gorek-Mueller Trust property addition to the Brown Bridge Quiet Area to preserve the environmentally sensitive area in the township. However, we need to once again state our objections to the proposed redevelopment of Arbutus Park Number 5. We have expressed our concerns over the past 3 years at all levels of review for this proposed project. It's unfortunate that the township, commissions, and this board did not take Lake Area's community recommendations seriously to create a park that balances lake protection with lake access. The township had an opportunity to showcase this project and be good stewards for the lakes area lakes by incorporating lake protection practices throughout the park redevelopment design and providing lake users and riparians educational opportunities at the park on the best practices for lake shoreline and nearshore habitat protection. Instead, the park redevelopment design has cut corners and eliminated critical best practices, and park use will continue to negatively impact the ecology of Arbutus Lake Number 5 and the surrounding riparian properties. Additionally, the township is turning their backs to Section 213 Forest Lakes District zoning regulations at the time when they are soliciting community input to the zoning update. Finally, I want to bring up the subject of brine and salt on the township roads in the lakes area. There is mounting scientific evidence that road salting increases chloride levels in surrounding lakes that could harm the lakes. We recommend that the township contract a water resources consulting firm to assess the impacts of years of brine applications on the roads around the lakes area lakes before additional brine is applied. Thank you for the opportunity to comment on these projects, and I'll submit my comments with the recording secretary. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further public comment? Okay, we will move on. Correspondence and report is in your packet. And you'll notice that the Safer Kids, Safer Schools draft report is in there. And just look for upcoming information in the public and also via emails on ways to participate in that process. We'll move on to the consent agenda. Ann, can you cover the consent agenda? And we do have an updated attachment A here at our desk.
The purpose of the consent agenda is to expedite business by grouping non-controversial items together to be dealt with by one board motion without discussion. Any member of the board, staff, or the public may ask that any item on the consent agenda be removed and placed elsewhere on the agenda for full discussion. Such requests will be automatically respected. If any item is not removed from the consent agenda, the action noted in parentheses on the agenda is approved by a single board action adopting the consent calendar. This evening, you have board minutes from March 13th, 2023 regular meeting and April 5th, 2023 special meeting. From the general fund, check numbers 17750 through 17814, paid in the amount of $160,459.83, with check numbers 17812 and 17813 voided. The emergency fund, check numbers 5259 through 5291, paid in the amount of $53,275.07. The receiving fund, check numbers 2892 through 2892, paid in the amount of $1,290.80. The escrow fund, check numbers 1921 through 1933, paid in the amount of $23,995.59. There was nothing paid out of the roads SAD fund. There are two payrolls. The first one dated February 26th through March 11th, check number 7305 through 7508, totaled $56,232.20. And the payroll dated March 12th through March 25th, check number 7509 through 7512, totaled $57,606.10. Total payroll was $114,038.30. Total amount paid, $353,059.59. Budget adjustments are BA 2023-01 through BA 2023-10. And there are three other items: agreement for collection of summer taxes, brine application, and a cell tower amendment.
Great, thank you, Ann. I did have the budget adjustments pulled off of there and just put during the Manor-Casterison part, so we can go over those, and then we can approve them just as a batch with that. And then the brine application, taking the brine application off of that. So did you have another adjustment?
Yes, just clarification. On our minutes, Trustee Corte let me know that we did have a missing second on our minutes for March 13. It's under H,
Whole section.
excuse
No, it's
me,
under
under I. Under I, the second one from the bottom, it says Lyle moved to accept the recommendation of the attorney for a negotiated settlement. It does not have a second. I can go and look at my notes. I did not bring them in here, but right now they currently do not have a second on that motion. I believe it was Cook, but I don't know for certain. So that is one. And we only have before us the March 13 minutes. The minutes for the April 5th meeting just came to us today, so that has not gone out to the
Yeah,
board.
we'll put those in our next
Right.
board packet. Okay. How do you want to handle that with the minutes that are presented then? Are you wanting to insert Cook in there? Are you wanting to, how do you want
I
to?
guess just allow clerical correction. I can either, if I don't have it in my notes, I'll watch the meeting and see who seconded it.
Okay,
But unfortunately, I didn't have the time to grab
Sure.
my notes and do that research.
okay, no problem. All right. So why don't we just pull those off, because they'll take a different motion. So we'll just pull those off, and we can put those just even at the end of the meeting. Just don't let me forget.
Okay.
And then we have the rest of the consent calendar. Would anybody like anything removed? Would any member of the public like anything removed? Okay, so we'll bring it back for a motion, and that would be for the consent agenda minus the minutes and minus the brine. Yep, and the budget adjustments.
I make a motion to approve the consent calendar with the exception of the minutes, the Bryan application, and the budget adjustments.
Support.
Okay, motion by Bartlett and support by Escortade. Any discussion? Okay, we'll do a roll call vote. Ann?
Bartlett,
Yes.
Escortade,
Yes.
M. Cortade,
Yes.
Walters,
Yes.
Lyle. Yes. Friend.
Yes. Okay, and with that, Steve, if you want to step up, we will move on to the business before the Township Board. And Steve was busy today, and I said I would go over the revenue expense report for the first quarter and just kind of pull out anything. And then, of course, you have the budget amendments, 1 through 10 in front of you. There's been one added since the packet went out. And that was on your desk with the addendum, yeah. There's a bigger, there's,
Where do you have the magnifying glass?
I know, I did print a bigger one for you. Look at that second page up on that, I think there's a loose page behind there that has it.
I can look.
No? I'll switch you.
No, I'm fine.
You sure? Okay. All right. It does get to be a little bit small of type, but,
Not really.
so for those, one, I'll just let you know with the budget adjustments, what we've done is just taken a look back through all of the minutes from December of 2022 through March of 2023 and looked at anything that impacted the fiscal year 2023 budget, but that was not already factored in there. Some motions were already factored in. So for example, when we approved the Traverse Connect expenditure for $15,000, and some were not, and you can see those, and they're noted on the right for the description. So we've got the trails study, because if you'll remember, we needed to cover the surveying costs. The fellowship commitment from CEDAM is the second one, and that was a $10,000 commitment for basically 15 months of personnel services, so quite a good payoff with that. The road projects, that was, we did have money in there for that Holiday Woods SAD, but the cost share, what was in there was $17,000, and it's just budgeted just slightly over that by about $3,500, so that was adjusted. The next one, the budget amendment 4, has to do with recognizing that we'll be receiving grant revenue for that project, and then recognizing the contract that we awarded to Spence Brothers. Budget Amendment 5 has to do with the HRA that we visited with the board about, and recall that 25.5 plus that Budget Amendment number 7 is the same thing, except for that's for the ambulance department. And those are not necessarily foregone funds of 25.5 or 15. They may only have a portion of them used. We won't know till the end of the year. The Budget Amendment 6 is the flock cameras, and that was a little bit higher for this year, and will be just marginally lower as installing them was included in the first year. Station 9, the 7,200 for the architect was added, because obviously we didn't know that when we were doing the budgeting last year. Grant awards, you'll recall we had a rather large motion or topic with the ambulance where we received 3 grants. It was the cardiac monitor, the Lucas system, and the Echo. But even though it was great to get all of those awards, they were about 20 grand less than we thought, because we were thinking we were going for the full amount at that time for the Echo, and we did a 50-50 split with that, and we were very fortunate to get that. So we just adjusted for that revenue, what we intend to receive. And then the last one was for the copier purchase, and I did want to let the board know about this, because what we approved was a 60-month lease, but we approved the purchase based on that 60-month lease. When we looked at it, Sue took a look, and we would be saving a decent amount by just paying it. Yeah, $2,200 by paying it outright. So Tracy and Sue and I talked about that, and we went ahead and felt like the board intended to use that for a purchase, and then to do that in the most economically advantageous way for the township. So we are moving ahead with that, but I wanted to let the board know that. And those are the 10 budget amendments that we have. The other thing we looked for was not just stuff in the minutes, but then going through the fiscal year first quarter to see if anything's out of line with the budget. And really, in the first quarter, you tend not to find too awful much. I mean, it is the first quarter, and things seem to look pretty good. I mean, if you look, and again, as I told Mindy, there's no test on this, because this was just given to you, although a portion of it was in your financial packet. But let's see, we're looking at last year. We had great property tax revenues, the additional amount, because you'll remember we take a lot of things into factor, like how much we usually increase, plus the millage times the assessments and so forth. But the reason we bump up on that, you'll say, well, we're a little higher than what we even anticipated. That's usually because there are additions to the tax roll, so anything that's built is just maybe a little bit larger than what we had estimated, because we're pretty conservative of that, so we just a little bit more. The revenues are pretty much in line. You can see that with permits and with passport fees. We've done well. Things seem to have rebounded, at least with respect to those 2 items from COVID, for sure. The federal revenue is reflected in there of the ARPA funding, because we are taking that as a revenue loss in this fiscal year. And you'll also notice, again, that state revenue sharing was going to be larger for 2022 versus 2023, because we had that adjustment for the census from the state. So keep that in mind. And then the reason for the bump on the grant awards, and you'll see the corresponding for the expenses, was the Holiday Woodlands Natural Area, the DNR Trust Fund, and that purchase. But pretty much, other than that, your interest rates, while interest rates are lousy for people who are purchasing homes, they're not so bad for the revenue that we receive on our end. Right, for that cash. Our reimbursements are a little higher there, you'll see last year, and that's related to some I believe when I looked, that was related to the TART Trail reimbursement for the engineering expense that we're doing on 3 Mile Road. But in general, as you go through the Township Board for the 101 fund for this year, you really don't see anything that stands out. I have, one item highlighted, and that's our contract services for our 209 department. And that's literally just a delay in the invoicing from the county. They implemented a new financial package software this year, and as well as they plan for it, there's always glitches in those. And so some of the billings for like DPW and this just kind of lagged a little bit, and that's one of them. But other than that, you won't see anything that's too much out of place here, especially when you factor in if these budget amendments are passed and then added into that revenue expense sheet. So, Steve, do you want to just touch base on, you and your staff were in a couple weeks ago, and then the auditors are in, and did you see anything different than what I was going over?
Yeah, no, that's what I was going to start by, letting you know that I didn't have a formal speech. I figured you'd be happy about that I didn't have a formal presentation for tonight, but no, we were in a couple weeks ago and went through and got everything ready, and a few things trickled in today that weren't ready back then, that we booked some entries today for the December 31st audit process. The auditors, I don't know, I know there was some modification of the date and so forth. I don't know if they've got their...
Today.
They were.
Yep, they were in the North Conference Room.
They were here today?
Yeah.
All right, sorry. I didn't know that, but so we sent some of the final information to them today. We booked some additional payables. We booked a receivable right at the end of the day today on swamp tax, and so we booked those, so that information was all prepared and sent to them. So that was in pretty good shape. I mean, there wasn't anything out of the ordinary, I think, this year. You're getting closer on some of those debt schedules to have some of those water sewer debts paid off, which is awesome because they're very complex and very much, no pun intended, they change almost every year just because of, it's based on flow. And so there's some confusion there sometimes. So those are getting lower and lower, your debt amounts out there. So that's great with no, substantially new debt coming on. So that's a fantastic thing to see. But other than that, yeah, everything else was straightforward. We were busy today getting kind of caught up on some bank reconciliations and doing those kind of things and tidying those up for the new year. For 2023, we finished all of February and we're most of the way through March. We've got some stuff we're working on with Land's End with their special assessments and receivables and revenues and cash and all those kind of things, just kind of making some modifications there. So that'll be some things we're going to work on tomorrow and get those buttoned up. But other than that, I think everything's ready for the auditors. Like I said, we've had some communication with them, and I know Sue has submitted the detailed trial balance and everything. So they're rolling. So hopefully by next quarter, they'll be done, and your audit's due by the end of June. So we're still, plenty of time and everything. So it shouldn't be an issue with getting it, completed and submitted by the deadline.
And we're in one of the last stages for the chart of accounts with BSNA, so that will finish getting done too. And just as you finish the debts for water and sewer, we'll have some more SADs coming online for you guys, so
Try and head them off before they get.
Well, yeah, I think we need to, get a good plan for them going forward to make it, so everything's recorded correctly and tracked easy. Yep, correct.
Great. Any questions for Steve? Nope. Okay, silence is golden. That's what they say. Okay, thank you very much, Steve.
Steve.
See you in the morning.
Okay, with that, we will move on to Wade Trim Engineering Projects. Joe Slanecki is here. Hi, Joe, how are you?
Good.
Awesome. So we have two things on here. We have the Arbutus Lake number 5 project, the contract and amendment, and then the lift station for the sewer project. Yes?
Do we have to vote on?
Oh, yes, we do. I'm sorry. Could you hold on one second? That would be great. Do you have a motion, Mindy?
Well, I have a question first.
Yeah,
On 4,
yeah.
it says it's revenue, shouldn't that be a negative number?
1, 2, 3, 4. Revenue grants. We're increasing the expense and increasing the revenue on that one.
Shouldn't one of them be negative?
No, we'd be increasing both.
Okay,
Yeah,
all right.
yep, we're good on those.
I'll make a motion to approve the 2023 budget amendments 1 through 10.
Okay, is there support? Okay, motion by Walters, support by Bartlett. Further discussion? Just in case, Mindy, I read that incorrectly, you'll hear me next month going, we need to change that. No, but I think that's correct, the way it's stated. Okay, all those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed by no? Okay, thank you very much. Thank you, Joe. All right, so we'll start with the contract amendment.
Yes. What you have before you is an amendment for the construction phase services of the Arbutus Number 5 Park Project. During design, the project had several iterations that it went through. Some items were added and then deleted later on and subsequently added back in a couple cases. And some discussions early on with Eagle and permitting. There were some items that were supported by them, and then later on, as they were halfway through design or implemented and nearing the end, they were told that those items would not go, so we had to pull them back out and redesign a few items. So the original contract was to go through construction phase services, but with the changes from permitting and some of the items that were optioned not to be put in, it was mostly used up. So what you have before you is to get you through construction with the project this summer.
Okay, and so this, you'll see the letter here from Brian Souza, kind of detailing that, and the standard professional services agreement, amendment number 1, that changes the fee by an additional time and material basis for an estimate of $23,200. Are there questions for Joe? Yeah, Mindy?
So I'm looking at page 46 of 118 of the packet, and this says a not to exceed of $78,000, and it included the construction phase services. So my question is, were you made aware that they were going over prior to this? Because usually if this is the case, they have to do everything in the scope of this for that price.
So I knew that they were getting close because when I get the invoices, it tracks it, but didn't see that they were that close to it. And these come sporadically based on how much that they're working on it at the time. And over the past, year and a half that we've had that contract, it's been more times somewhat frequently and then sometimes less frequently. So, and then again, it is a time, I'm sorry, it is a time and,
Time and materials not to exceed.
exactly, yep. So, I don't know if Joe, do you have any further input on that?
Yeah, and some those time and materials not to exceed, part of the scope of services was understanding that there wasn't going to be a lot of issues with permitting and the regulatory authorities changing their mind on us. So those factors are kind of out of Wade Trim's control as we're doing the design portion of the project.
Yep, that is true. I know with Eagle and as well with the DNR. So, I feel like they've been doing a good job getting the project through, keeping it updated, following through with Eagle and with the DNR, but there were some extra hoops to jump through with both of those agencies.
Correct. And the construction phase services it's for inspection, but we do not have it estimated for full-time inspection on this project. It's to cover materials, testing, and checking those items that are going to be buried and underground before they bury them, that kind of work. We have the architect who designed the bathhouse. He will be doing shop drawing approvals and checking to make sure that what's submitted is correct. And then as items that are above ground are completed, it'll be to go out, check it, make sure it was built the way it was supposed to be built, and then be gone.
Yep, we are having a meeting coming up on this project, and Garth is handling a lot of this, so I appreciate Joe kind of fielding this, because Garth has been doing the day-to-day on this one. Gosh, I think that meeting is coming up within the next 3 weeks. Construction.
Yes, the pre-construction meeting is starting soon. We've gotten through bidding award, and contracts have been reviewed, and I'm pretty sure they've been approved.
Yep, we awarded, yep. Yep.
I'll make a motion to approve Amendment 1 to the Arbutus 5 park contract.
Okay, is there support? So how do you want to handle the contract? I'll support. Motion by Bartlett, support by Friend. Further discussion? Okay, all in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. Let's do a roll call vote, Ann.
Bartlett,
Yes.
Friend,
Yes.
M. Cortade,
No.
S. Cortade,
No.
Lyle,
Yes.
Walters.
No.
That's a 3-3.
Okay, so that motion fails. So how do you want to handle the construction oversight?
I think it's covered under the original contract that was signed. My concern is that, and maybe this happened, and you just can't recall it at this point in time, if you will, and that's what I'm seeking to clarify, is that, you know, the changes of the scope were, and the costs associated were relayed. Because this is a change order, you know, and the cost should have been relayed as, before they were spent.
So, I mean, they were relayed through their billings, I mean, through their invoices, and more time was needed to be spent through the Eagle and the DNR process.
But were you made aware that, hey, at this point in time, we have expended the funds associated with this part of the scope of work?
I don't know exactly what level we're at the 78. I think we're just under that right now.
Yes, I believe so.
Yeah. But I can pull that, but we'd be just under that. So I'm aware of what they were doing through the, you know, having to jump through those hoops, for sure. Yes, and, you know, make sure that everything was required that the Eagle wanted, everything that was required that the DNR wanted as well to do the PSBs, so.
I mean, but is this proposal the first time you knew the increase was, you know, almost, what, 25% of the original contract?
So this I was aware of when Brian let me know about maybe 3 weeks ago, since the last meeting.
Because this is a substantial change. That's my concern, is that, you know, 78,000 plus another $23,000, that's significant.
Yep. But we are in the middle of the pre-construction, and we need to have the engineers' help with doing this. And so we're between a little bit of a rock and a hard place in going forward with
The
this.
contract that says they already said they were going to do it, so that's where I'm concerned.
But then again, the vendor would come back and say, these portions weren't included, you know, were anticipated.
Right, and then it's the engineer's responsibility to get with you and say, okay, to do this, it's going to cost X. To do this, it's going to cost Y. and I don't think that that happened.
I think that's what he was doing. That's what he was doing when he got this to me.
I guess that's what I understand this.
Yeah, but the 78,000 was supposed to cover this as well, so
But it didn't
this,
cover,
but this amount should have been, the flag should have been raised before you spent the 23,000 for the construction.
Well, we knew that there were additional things during, I knew that there were additional things during Eagle and DNR.
Right, but did you know the
To the
additional cost of this?
to the extent of the cost, I mean, not in perspective to the entire project cost, so to speak. So we can get some further clarification from Brian on this and then bring this back to the board if the board wants to handle it that way.
Yeah,
we
and-
just can't do anything more, any more work, right? Because we're close to the 78.
Mm-hmm.
So that puts a stop to the project, I would assume.
I don't know, because I haven't run up against this before. We've always, had pretty good,
Working relationship.
yeah, working relationship and contracts with this, and this is the first time that we've ran into this. This isn't the first time we've had contract amendments, but,
You lose.
so what's the board's pleasure?
We have a meeting on the 25th. Can we throw that on it? So that maybe Brian can,
We can, let me check and see when we've got the,
yeah, I see where Mindy's coming from. We've seen,
well, I
For
do too.
several
I
years.
do too, absolutely. I mean, the first thing when I got it, I looked back at the contract, I'm like, but then I also realized the additional legwork that they had to do with that too.
well, and I get that, the question that I have is that, was it relayed that what the costs associated with this are gonna be? Because this is a significant,
And I'm telling you, it was relayed. You see the dates on the letters. That's,
Unfortunately, I wasn't super involved with this portion of the project, so I can't answer all the questions without.
I'm just looking for that pre-construction meeting. I must not, I don't have it on my invite list yet, so I don't have the date on that. So we'll hold it until the, unless there's another motion. Is there another motion? Okay, then we'll hold it to the meeting on the 25th. All right. Do you want to go over the next material, which is the, actually, it's what we'll be meeting on the 25th.
What we'll be meeting on the 25th. This is the draft project plan for the Clean Water State Revolving Fund for the force main from Pump Station 1 to the wastewater treatment plant. We did a preliminary engineering report to get a rough estimate of what it would cost to replace that back, I believe it was early last summer that was completed. And this is a project plan that is going to the state in order to receive state revolving funds and a low-interest loan in order to complete portions of the project. So this document just outlines some of the environmental concerns, some of the possible alternatives, goes through a recommended alternative, and lays out some of the costs that are associated with it and what to expect with the project. It is in draft form, so it is up for review. Questions can be asked, and nothing's off the table for questions, and we can discuss it during the April 25th meeting and address any questions during the public hearing, any questions that any residents have or people who are going to be affected by this. They can ask questions, and anything that can be addressed with the project or concerns can be answered, and anything that makes sense can get incorporated into the project plan before submittal. So this is just letting you know it's here, and
Yeah, Perfect. We do have a joint meeting with Acme Township, who is the project partner with this. This is that project, you'll recall that we have $2 million in funding from the county ARPA funding. We'll also be looking at dedicating funding from the townships at a minimum level in the future. Hypothetically, or approximately, we're looking at about rough numbers, like $1 million from Acme Township, $1 million from East Bay. We'll look at those percentages, though, because there's a specific percentage on our agreement that we operate with these. And then, as you know, we have been seeking additional funding for past that $4 million. Again, that was updated, that cost to an $11 million cost. So the other $7 million, we've asked for directed spending from the state, as well as congressionally directed funding from the feds. And we have had input back from one of those that, it was going through the process. So, we shall see. And they all know that the CWSRF is something that we're applying to as well. So it's like a little like Swiss cheese. We're just trying to layer this so that, we can come up with the total funding. And
In the way this is laid out right now, it assumes that the 7 million that doesn't have funding yet is all taken out through the state revolving fund. So if there's additional funds that come in, the numbers in this report would change. And still all subject to design and construction or bidding, and then knowing where you're at, so.
And they want to see a public hearing and, that discussion. And so we just thought, since it's really with two townships, and we would just do it both at the same time. And that way, there won't be any clarification needed later on which township had what and who passed what when. And, well, I'll take a look at that at the same time.
Yeah, and this was presented to Acme Township at their board meeting last week, so they're aware also.
And you did receive your agenda and that draft already for this meeting, so that's the packet. I think it's already online. So any other questions for Joe on that? Okay. Thank you, Joe. Really appreciate it. With that, if you will, I did forget to put on here, I wanted to touch base with you. This is no action items, but just kind of a legal update and see if you wanted to have Peter at another meeting, but did just want to touch base on some updates. You had asked the other day at the meeting on how that bottomland conveyance interacted with the appeal, so I did want to just touch base with you. So as we talked about, Traverse, with TC Water Sports and Port Traverse, which is an interested neighbor in the activities, the ZBA had, First Planning and Zoning had determined that it was an accessory use that TC Water Sports was to the hotel. That was appealed to the ZBA, and the ZBA determined that they were not an accessory use. So while, then that was appealed to court, to Elsenheimer's, to Circuit Court, and Elsenheimer said, I need further clarification on your findings of fact, so I know a solid foundation of why you chose that it's not an accessory use. So that came back to the ZBA. Brand new decision. It wasn't reviewing their old decision. It was to make another decision with the findings of fact. They did choose, again, their decision was that it was not an accessory use. And so now TC Water Sports is appealing that to court and wants a different outcome. So we'll see what happens with that. That's in court right now. As to why they did that, when during that entire process at the same time, because they weren't an accessory use deemed by the ZBA, they came in front of the Planning Commission for site plan review and received approval. But, so they have the ability to operate there, so, why did they choose to appeal is obviously probably, and I'm assuming, well, one, as I said, it's their legal choice, they have the right to do that. And if I were trying to figure out their rationale, and that it's because they preferred the scope of what they're allowed to do there under the accessory use versus what they can do there as under the current site plan review. So, and I think it all has to do, PT, correct me if I'm wrong, it has to do with the placement of the hut. Yeah, so that's, again, the TC Water Sports, so you may have heard that there's court cases with that, so I wanted to let you know that again and just kind of bring that up. There's also, you may have heard of cases with respect to Lakemore, and that has to do with, there was an appeal, there was a determination from staff on the boats that they were allowed to have there based on the square footage of their grandfathered use. And that was taken to the ZBA. And they made a determination that agreed, I believe, with staff's determination. And then that was appealed by LLC Rielo Estado, which is a neighbor, and also as well jointly with a resident group, neighbor group. And so they appealed that ZBA decision that was the staff decision as well, based on the square footage of the boats. That was heard by Judge Elsenheimer in Circuit Court, and the ZBA decision, and thus the staff decision, was upheld as, he upheld that decision as the determination of the square footage on the boats. So that's now being, I believe that is now being, I'm trying to remember if that one's being appealed or not appealed. I believe that one might be being appealed. No, I'm sorry. That one is not being appealed right now. So that's where it stands. Elsenheimer said ZBA was correct, the staff was correct, and that's where it sits right now. Sorry, we always have to check ourselves with these ones that are getting volleyed back and forth. But anyway, there is a civil suit right now that Lakemore is being sued by the same Rielo Estado and the same neighbor group as well. But that is a civil suit. And so just to let you know, the township doesn't have participation or involvement in that. That is a civil suit. There are things mentioned in the case that have to do with the township, such as zoning and other things, but that is a case, that's a civil case between other parties. So I wanted to clarify that. And then, as you know, we've been, the planning and zoning has been working through enforcement and complaints with respect to some issues with Lakemore and zoning. And we've been in contact with the property owner and developer, Lakemore. And right now we're at a point, very concentrated work to make determinations. Last fall, I would say, we all met in August of last year, although work was going on prior to that, but I'm saying kind of a meeting of like absolutely everybody last August. We are at the point now where we're ready to file an injunctive relief, but we are going through, the first thing when you go to court is they require mediation. And so we're kind of doing a self-imposed mediation right now with the developer and the township, and in trying to see where we can get to. And as Peter has relayed, that just gives us a better case if we have to end up actually in court. So it's a good step and a good process for us to go through. And with that process, Peter's involved, planning and zoning's involved, our engineers are involved, and then of course the developer and their attorney as well. So those are the three cases you may have heard of with respect to Lakemore. And then in other court cases, that we just settled with an MTT case that was brought before this board. We don't have any others right now at this time. So I just wanted to bring you up to speed with that. And if you would like Peter to be here to give you any more detail on those, just let me know and we can arrange that at a future meeting. Okay? With that, we'll go on to the next agenda item. And that is planning and zoning. PT, would you kind of make your way up here? We've got the quarterly report, site plan review for Victoria Place, and then the introduction of the short-term rental moratorium extension ordinance. So you will see that, thank you. The first quarter for 2023 planning report starts on page 51. PT, did you have anything else to add to this, or it's a pretty complete report? Did you just want to see if this board had any questions?
Yeah, I did want to make one very minor correction on code enforcement activity for January 31st, 23. It's the first one noted there towards the bottom. The description of the violation says a truck in the driveway, and I'm going to attribute that truck word to being as a result of my chicken scratch. When Claire was reading my notes, it was actually junk in the driveway, which was removed completely and mitigated by my site visit on the 31st of January. It was all taken care of.
Okay, very good, thank you.
And open any questions if the board had any.
Does the board have any questions on the planning and zoning quarterly report? I'm just glad that that truck in the driveway was not the burnt truck that we had.
I had a close eye on that one.
It is gone, and it couldn't have gone soon enough for my taste, so. Okay, with that, we'll move on to the site plan review, 1-23 for Victoria Place. You have all of the information in front of you. You have the staff you have the packet overview sheet, you have the staff memo, the minutes for the planning commission meeting. Mindy, did you want to add anything to this one?
I think this is a good use of the property, that they are basically wanted to split the property and weren't able to. There is no splits available at this time, so they were able to essentially use a site condo to get that same thing to happen, to allow for another residence on the property.
They,
Go ahead.
they want to split the property so that the condo association will have the one part where the condos, or the houses set in,
It's only one house,
there's one house existing, right?
and there's one going in.
Oh, I was thinking there were two of them going in.
No, just
Okay.
one.
So, just because I'm familiar with this property, I drove by it. So, the condo, there's going to be a third house between the two that are in the picture? Or?
It's going over.
This, it's going over there? Okay, so there is a third house between the two that are there right now, that are using the same, their driveway kind of connects.
Yeah, but they're those are two different parcels, even though they have a shared driveway.
Right.
So so the new house is going,
At least it used to be mom and daughter, but,
It's on page 68. You can see where they're putting the other unit. Page 68. But look for page 69, because the 68 is on too small of a typo. It's too small of a font.
okay, see, I thought that was the house that was there already.
No, see, this is the total outline of the, see how this goes? See the etch?
Oh, I see.
yeah.
So, okay. Okay, I got it. Thank you. I just was trying to figure out why we were backtracking to get that done.
no, we're adding
Yeah.
one.
Okay, I got it. Thank you.
Anything else? Nope. Any questions from board members? Okay, again, you have the staff plan and you have the motion on page 71 from the Planning Commission, and the suggested motion is on page 54. which would be to move to approve the site plan review 1-23 Victoria Place site condo, subject to the staff findings of fact dated February 28th, 2023, and the 3 suggested conditions included at the end of the staff memo.
I make that motion.
Support.
Okay, motion's made by Walters and support by Bartlett. The only question I had, Mindy, was the driveway. And the driveway, is that still going to come out onto Garfield? Because it's bad enough around that corner as it is.
They're gonna have to talk to the road commission about that.
Okay. The way they have it cited on there, they would probably come out to the, because that's just an easement on the back, or is that a road, or?
That's an easement to the black, is it Black Bar?
Yellow birch and black birch.
Yeah, it's the Black Bark subdivision. It's what backs up to them.
Yeah, that's the easement to the airplanes, the airport stuff that's back there.
Yeah, actually, maybe,
The airport stuff that's back here.
Has the windsock,
yeah,
you can see from the road.
Yeah.
the bowling pin.
Dairy Queen.
Okay. All right, so there is motion and support, and I believe that that did have to be subject to the conditions and permits by the other agencies, which would be the road commission too, so. Okay. We'll do a roll call vote, Ann?
Walters.
Yes.
Bartlett.
Yes.
Escorted.
Yes.
Lyle.
Yes.
M. Cortade.
Yes.
Friend.
Yes. Okay, thank you. And we have the introduction of the short-term rental moratorium. So bright and early, I don't think Jacob actually went to sleep on Wednesday night. Thursday morning, probably 7 in the morning, we had the updated moratorium language. The only issue with that is we had a couple wrong dates, so you'll see in there where those have been corrected. So, page 79, it's not May 14th. The 6 months took it to June 22nd of 2023. And so that has been changed. And then based on when these end, so if you remember, we had the first moratorium, it was 6 months. The first extension took effect after that ended and was for another 6 months. It did not overlap, and that was stated in the ordinance. This one is a little bit different in that this one will lapse the current one. So this one will go into effect and is written as such as to when it is published after it's passed, assuming that it's introduced tonight, and this is just for an introduction tonight. Then it could potentially be passed at the May 8th meeting, May 8th, and could go into effect, when it's published. So I put an estimated date of the 15th there, assuming took, maybe not quite a week to get into the Record Eagle. With that, it would take it to August 15th if we left it at 3 months. And August 15th is just one day after our August meeting, which if we pass anything at that August meeting, doesn't give us enough time to get anything in the newspaper. So that's if it were a 3-month moratorium. So in addition to changing correcting the dates, we changed it from a 3-month to a 4-month, so that we would have that time if something is passed in August. And this does allow what the board had agreed to last Wednesday, that during this moratorium, we can allow for those exceptions, and they're covered in Section 2 and Section 3, the exceptions for the pending applications.
Just a couple of questions.
Yes.
Because I printed my rewrite separate, so
Okay.
on the second page of the redlined version, which is page 3,
Yep.
the fourth whereas, should that one be 3 months, 4 months? I think it should be.
For
Yes.
consistency.
Yes. I'm sorry, I didn't see that one in there, so good.
That's okay, I thought there was another one. Oh, and the top of the fourth page, the very top line of the next page, additional period.
3 months, 4 months, yep, thank you. I should have searched for that term, and I didn't on that one.
It's okay, I just thought I
Yeah.
had seen them before when I read them online, and then when I printed them, it wasn't there, and I'm like, wait a minute.
I'm just looking to see if I see any further ones.
So Beth, just to make sure everyone hears it, those that were in the queue, those 22 that had lapsed, can all submit their applications now, but they must have them submitted
Not now,
Oh.
once this takes effect.
In May.
in May. Thank you for that. See, I was going to cause more problems.
I was gonna say,
Didn't mean to do that, sorry, Preston. You know, just to add more to your job. Well, I just think that there was some misunderstanding where some folks thought that they needed to wait until after this moratorium, new moratorium ended, and that is not true. They
Because we're
can do it
putting the
as soon as-
verbiage within the moratorium itself.
Exactly. It's very clear in in that.
And those 24 or 22 will have the additional $100.
Correct.
Yeah, only those 22. The two in the queue would not.
That's right. So this is just a motion to introduce the ordinance, and would someone like to make that motion?
I would make the motion to move to introduce the ordinance extending the temporary moratorium for short-term rentals as
Presented with a
Presented.
4-month, with a
the
4-month
4-month
duration. Perfect. That's great. Thank you. Is there support?
Support.
Motion made by Bartlett and supported by M. Cortade. Any further discussion? Okay, roll call vote, Ann?
Bartlett.
Yes.
M. Cortade.
Yes.
S. Cortade.
Yes.
Walters.
Yes.
Lyle.
Yes.
Friend.
Yes. Very good, thank you. See, that wasn't too painful, right?
That wasn't, and Sue, thank you for making that clarification, because there are people tuning in that would have questions, so appreciate it.
Thank you.
But one thing that they can start doing is make sure that they have all their materials together and in preparation for that application date, which will come up pretty quickly.
Because they will only have 30 days.
Good point.
Right, okay, terrific. Thank you so much, PT, appreciate it. Okay, with that, we'll move on to Grand Traverse County, and Rob Henschel is here. Hi, Rob, how are you? Good. And you can stand at the podium or sit, doesn't matter. How are you doing?
I'm good. I'll stand. I promise it won't take that much time. I know you've got a long meeting, but I really appreciate your time. And just to bring you up to date on a few things at Grand Traverse County, we've got tomorrow is the annual equalization meeting by state statute. We have to have that meeting once a year. And looks like our equalized value has been reported at $9.8 billion for all the properties in all of Grand Traverse County, with a taxable value of 6.9. So that's up again. I don't remember last year's numbers, but it's up again. So times are good. I know some places of the United States we're looking at possible economic downturns, but as always, Grand Traverse County and northern Michigan is quite often insulated. So the effects of that don't hit us as fast as it hits some other areas of the country. So that's encouraging. We have 5 new commissioners this year. I think I reported that before. And we've got a $38 million budget, rough numbers. And so to come in as a brand-new county commissioner with nine board members, and 5 out of 9 are brand new this year. So tomorrow, we're going to have a study session on the budget process and, you know, how we arrive at all these tax dollars and how they're allocated and spent for public services. So that's part of our meeting. Actually, our meeting after the meeting tomorrow is a study session. We did, I don't know if I reported this previously, I was out of town for a few meetings, so I don't remember which ones I've missed, but we did engage with Cole Stoker is a law firm that we've used on and off for different things throughout the year. They're now our official civil counsel. So instead of going, counties reach a certain size, you need more specialty law advisors. So instead of going to the county prosecutor who specializes in criminal law, instead of civil law, we actually go now to Cole Stoker directly for almost everything. The FOIA coordination is still done at the county prosecutor's office. They've got specialized staff to do that, but any legal questions about that would go to Cole Stoker. And that's for a one-set monthly fee. So that's a nice, we know exactly what we're paying, and we've, virtually unlimited if it's within the scope of the contract. See, the MPO, there's been tell of, I'm sure you've heard of it. I don't know if you've had a presentation on the...
Tonight.
Tonight, oh, okay. Well, Grand Traverse County has a resolution before us. We actually had it at the last meeting, but there was some errors in it, and because of the length of it, we said, just bring it back. It's not that time sensitive. So we're going to fix that and bring it back, and there was no question as to, whether we're going to pass it. Nobody was against the idea, but the municipal planning organization, I think it is, it just means more federal dollars for building our local infrastructure. And, realistically, that's getting more of our own tax dollars back in our local government so we can continue to build and maintain infrastructure. At the last meeting, the pavilions gave a report on the situation there over the last few years. The ratings with the state of Michigan fell lower. Years ago it was this 5-star facility that was everyone was singing its praises, and now they're having some rough times. So the Grand Traverse County Commission unanimously brought them in and asked them really hard questions. They talk about, okay, we've got labor problems. Okay, you're not the only county-owned medical care facility in Michigan. They're all having those same problems. Why are your ratings down and theirs are not? And so we really, really called them onto the carpet, and they understand that we expect better things in the future, and they've given us some steps they're taking to move forward. They've got a brand new food service vendor. It's not actually run by the Grand Traverse County Commission. It's run by the DHHS board, which is appointed by the county commission. So if they're not doing the job, the fact is there's state law that allows us to recall our appointments, and I think because that law is there, that's implied there is a responsibility to do so if things aren't going well. So we take that responsibility very seriously. We don't want to be haphazard about it, but that is something we've discussed is, do we have the right appointees? And I think right now we do. They're very dedicated to seeing improvements. And they know if they aren't the right ones for the job, then someone else will be put in there that is right for the job. But the other thing was in the news is issues with Beta changing their own articles of incorporation. In the past, historically, the Beta board is appointed by 2 county commissions, Grand Traverse County appointing 4 of them, others being appointed by Leelanau County. And they added more seats to their board and said they're going to appoint them themselves. And we said, hey, wait a minute, that's taking away a layer of accountability. That doesn't make sense. And so there's been some discussions there. They say they want more diversity on the board. We say, well, then just ask for it. Give us classifications. We'll appoint people within those classifications. Let's not remove elected officials from the equation so that the voter's only option is to get rid of Beta by not voting for the millage. Instead, we have a layer of accountability where we can make changes within the system without eliminating the whole system. So that's, obviously some raised tempers on both sides of that issue. We're having a meeting, actually, I don't know if it's the administration of Beta and Grand Traverse and Leelanau. When Leelanau Board of Commissioners discussed this, there was some concern, some of them shared our concern that you're just appointing your own board. That's, the fox guarding the hen house concept, and there's no accountability by doing that. In theory, an organization like Beta, a transit authority, could just add 20 members to the board and appoint them themselves. And that's just, there's no checks and balances there. So anyway, those are just a few items going on in Grand Traverse County. Anything else of interest or any questions on anything I've mentioned?
Any questions?
All right.
Okay, thank you. Have a good evening. Okay, with that, we'll move on to the Grand Traverse County Road Commission, and we have Brad Kuczynski here and Elisa Korn. How are you? Come on up, Elisa.
I'm just going to defer to Brad.
Okay, well, that's fine, too.
Yeah, so this is going to be shorter than last time because it's kind of, last time was a little bit overwhelming trying to catch up on a bunch of the stuff we had going. But a couple of big things happening right now. We're starting grading. We really hit it hard starting today as the roads are starting to dry out a little bit and we're not in a swamp situation. So we've got enough roads to keep our crews going. If people are calling to complain, we don't have 15 graders. We can't be on every road the same day, but we are going to be out there, and we're going to be hitting them hard for the next month, month and a half before the first brining application takes place. So that's one of the big things we have going. We still have a lot of trees that need to come down. The last windstorm we had really did some damage, so we are taking down trees that were significantly damaged also. You'll see some of our crews out throughout the township taking out these clumps of trees is effectively what happened. So those are two big things that we're changing into as the season progresses. We also have a couple of issues that have come up from the state regulatory agencies. Effective immediately, we are no longer allowed to pick up deer. So if somebody hits a deer and it's in the traveling path of the road, all we can do is move it off the road and on the other side of the ditch, and we have to leave it there. So if it's in a neighborhood, a residential neighborhood, it's going to smell. But there's nothing we can do. The DNR says if we touch it and move it off-site, it's considered poaching, and we would be subject to fines, and the individual driver would also be subject to fines. So the other problem with it too is if we decide we wanted to get a permit, it could take 2 days for us to get the permit and get everything taken care of to get it set up. So by that time, in the middle of summer, it's ridiculously hard to pick that deer up anymore. So it's something we are trying to work with the DNR. They have no interest in it. Their instructions to a lady in your township, an 80-year-old, called us and said a deer got hit and it was in her front yard. We said, well, we can't pick them up. So she called the DNR, and the DNR told her she had to manually move the deer onto her property and bury it on her property, or put it into her waste can so that it can be picked up by her collector. Well, I know GFL does not pick up and will not pick up if there's a deer in it. So just be prepared. I understand we're trying to get them to respond. They have not been very cooperative. This whole thing started because of the fact that they got a few calls because they thought that what happened, people came out during COVID and started walking. So now they're walking through these state lands. We never left them in subdivisions. We'd pick them up, we'd take them out, we'd find state land, and we'd put them right on the edge of the right-of-way at state land so that they could deteriorate naturally. Well, now that you have all these people, they're either reporting them as poached animals, or they're saying that that's, inconvenient for them and it smells bad when they're trying to walk this. So we have no place that we can move them to now, and it is going to end up becoming an issue over the summer. So I just want to make sure you're aware of that.
And they do tell you can put them in the trash, because I've had the DNR tell me to tell someone to put them in the trash. Go ahead.
Question, what about is the road commission, the DNR, somebody gonna spread lime on them so?
We are not allowed to do that. We haven't been allowed to do that for about 9 years.
Somebody's been doing it.
I'm sure people do it if it's not picked up, but we cannot. So,
Sue?
Yeah, just for clarification, just deer or all roadkill?
any animal that is hit that is other than a domesticated animal, we can't touch.
Okay.
Because the animals belong to the DNR until they don't want them to belong to them, but you still can't move it. So it's a very bad situation that we're trying to work out, but understand you are probably going to get calls. And we are getting calls about deer sitting in front yards already. And it's going to pick up as the summer goes on when it's hot, because you don't want to be in your front yard if a deer's sitting out there. They smell pretty rank pretty quick, so.
So I dealt quite a bit with a gal last week that there was a raccoon that had gotten hit, and it was in the middle of the road. And she called the road commission, and by the time she went back down to the drive, it had been moved to right in front of her mailbox.
That's as far as we can move it. It's supposed to be moved directly in line off the road. And
So it can't go on the other side of the road if there isn't anything? It has to go where there's a mailbox?
we are not taking any chances. Genesee County got fined for this, and it was a $10,000 fine. So we are following exactly what they tell us to do until we can get a resolve on it, because we can't afford to be fined $10,000 for every animal we move improperly.
I understand that a police lieutenant came out and took care of the animal for them,
Well,
because she couldn't do it, and
Yeah.
I didn't have anyone that could go there and do anything.
and it's an unfortunate situation. For years, we've collected deer. It's something we just did as a service. It's not like we get any revenue from it. It's something that costs us money, but it's not fair for the homeowners to have to deal with a deer that was hit in the road, sitting in front of their house. And we've been trying to get it worked out so that they can keep doing the normal collection we did, which was fine because it was set in lands that were not being used. We never put it in front of someone's house. We never put it in a subdivision. We always moved it to state lands, because there's state lands all over the place. And we had a lot of farmers that would take the deer too, because during the winter especially, when we have deer hit, the eagles will come and start scavenging. Well, an eagle takes a long time to take off. So we were moving them out into these farm fields so that they could come in instead of being hit by a car. And that's another concern too, is the fact that they will be hit by cars. They do not take off very quickly. So that's something we are trying to work out, and we will keep you updated. We'll probably have something coming out soon. We have the County Road Association lawyer is dealing with them to try and get some sort of solution, but they so far have not returned calls.
So you guys are willing to continue to
Oh,
do
yeah,
it?
we have no
Yeah.
problem doing the service,
All right.
but it's just something we right now cannot.
Yeah.
So then the other thing that has changed, and it's coming, we're not sure exactly when, but the Eagle set new requirements on brine usage. And they did not go through proper rulemaking procedures, so that got put off, and we're still working to try and get them to do it. What they do not want anymore is the mineral well brine, but they don't understand the process and why it's used. We use the manufactured brine, which is not covered by the same policies. But if everybody in the state has to go to this manufactured brine, the price is going to go up double again from what it was. So we're trying to get them to understand the reasoning for using brine. We have tested the waters throughout the county for the last 2.5 years. We have extremely low sodium in all of our water except for Kids Creek. And that is because Kids Creek, all the water that's flowing into Kids Creek is coming out of Meyer and Lowe's and all those big parking lots. And if you go into them and you see them during the winter, they're white. And that's where the sodium's coming from. The rest of the places we use it, it actually reduces the amount of salt that we have to use to get roads to thaw during the winter. So when we put the brine on the salt, it wets it, and then when it's distributed out, it sticks to the road instead of bouncing and scattering out off the edge of the road. So it reduces our usage of salt overall, and it's been very successful for us. We've reduced our salt usage for winter maintenance drastically from where it used to be. I mean, it's probably maybe 70% of former usage, and we have more busy roads than we had in the past. So that's helpful. The other problem is it also being used for gravel roads. And there are issues with gravel roads. They don't understand the volumes that they're talking about, because if I were to put it down at the volume they were talking about, we'd be paying about $10 per stretch that we now pay $2. They just don't understand what we're actually using it for. And they have a separate group within Eagle which tells us we are required to keep dust down to a minimum, because it's bad for people who have asthma to be breathing in dust. So one portion of Eagle is telling us we have to treat them and do something to keep some of the dust down. and the other one is telling us not to use it because it could potentially cause problems. They say it's because people use it when it's raining. Nobody uses it when it's raining. We don't even use it if there's a threat of rain. They don't understand the process, but again, they're stepping in saying that we should not be using it, when in the long run, the length of time that it sits there and has an opportunity to run off is minutes, because it soaks in and it sits there, and the new product especially that we're using works so well that we're having much more stable roads. The roads aren't getting chatterboarded nearly as quick, and so we're working again with the state agencies to try and get them, but right now, for us, it's not going to be a problem. Next year, it could be a real problem if they implement this. So those are the three major things I had. Do you guys have any questions?
Well, I guess we'll dovetail onto that. We do have the road brine agreement in front of us today. And so with that, you'll see the background material that's in your packet. And I did talk with Jay Sixkuski this morning, and he explained the rationale behind, because he noted, I had a note to you guys about, maybe I hadn't talked with the road commission about this agenda item, maybe delaying the decision until May, and he's really hoping that we have a decision in April so that they can plan out their work. But I didn't really know where they had changed their spreadsheet. And so he explained a little bit of the rationale why was, I believe you had a township who complained that there were other, areas of gravel roads that they would like done and that weren't on the list. And of course, those are the seasonal ones. And so they said, well, if you would have let us know, we would have approved those too. So what the road commission's done in response, which makes sense, is to list out pretty much everything that they have in the township. And then we can choose to do the additional ones or not. The only issue I had with it, and because I said to Jay, so in theory, then we could continue to approve what we had in the past, and it would be the same coverage. And he said, yes, but there are some roads here I had noticed, I think Ike was one of them, that was like, I don't know, it was like a mile before, and now it's 0.67, and there's a newer part, there's a shorter part that's not bolded. And he said, well, that wasn't the intent. The intent was to keep it the same as the previous year and then just add those other portions. So they would take a more detailed look at that and make sure, if case we did just approve to do what we had done in the previous year. Now, the one item that you will see is last year, and I appreciate the road commission very much, we had some complaints on one of our parking lots that's gravel, and they keep some brine on hand that didn't have to be with the mass application. And so they came out and they brined that parking lot for us at Killingsworth. And that helped a lot, apparently, from feedback that I've gotten. And so you'll see that's down at the bottom, 0.04. They just took the, yeah, it was. So again, you'll see this Excel spreadsheet has been kind of tabulated with the seasonal, is what has not been included before, where it says seasonal, yes, that's what hasn't been done before, and then the no's are where it has been done before. Main Street was an outlier on that one. But again, Jay said he would be happy to take a look at that.
And this is, part of this too is, we've moved it into our GIS system. So now when you see these, when we get this back and we start putting them in, that application we showed you talked about last time with the GIS, you can go on there and see where all your brine routes are too. And you can actually draw a line on that brine route from where you want it to where you want it to stop. And that's all we're going to charge you for, is what that is. So you don't have to go, like if you find that there's one that doesn't need it at the south end or the north end, whatever, you say, okay, this is the actual stretch we want, and we can make that change to it. And we only bill you for actual footage travel.
Yeah. And I guess I'm just going based on what we hear. And in the past, we would get seasonally people call about certain roads that were brined and say, it didn't take very well, or they graded too soon, or they graded too late, whatever the case may be. We really have, I think, had fewer comments with the second subsequent year of the calcium chloride, what's it called, Liquidow? Yeah, Liquidow. So I think we've had less concern since then. So, we were at like just over $9,000 for an application, so we spent $18,000. And you're looking at about, for that roughly that same amount, instead of the $87.50, it's about $1,000 increase for this year. So we just have to adjust our budget a little bit based on that. I can't remember what I said. I think I said what we had in our budget for it.
We have, does that say 50?
18,000, just over 18,000. Oh, no, that's not right.
Yeah, I can't quite read.
We have 52,000, and 20 of that is brine application. So we have about 20,000.
And like I say, if between now and then, if you want to make changes, feel free. If you want to cut a section, do whatever you need to do. We're only going to charge what's actually applied. And we won't be doing that until like first part of May, when we get all the roads graded the first time. We'll then come through and do the final grade to make sure we're ready, and then put down the application. So you've got some time to look at that. And once we get it back from you, we'll put it into that application of where your limits are, and then we'll be able to show you how to use the map to see it.
One thing you'll note on that page 84, where it has this year's amounts, that 9,800, that would be for one application. So this would be the 22 for one application. So if we were going to do the two applications, we would have to add in, say, for another 9,000, because we had 9,000 and 9,000 last year.
And what's it, you're saying it's 98, 98? That's our estimate? Yeah. So-
Yep. So I don't know what the pleasure of the board is. I mean, I think one conservative approach fiscally would just, this year to do the same roads that we've done before. I've never had anybody call and ask for any of those seasonal roads to be done. So I would say, that would be one suggestion the board might consider, is just do the same roads that we've done before. I'll continue to have I'll continue to have Killingsworth Park parking lot in there, and I appreciate them doing that. It helps us out a lot. But is there any other, options the board wants to consider?
I think that makes sense. As you've mentioned, we can let you know if there are other ones that we find
and
should
even after
be.
we do the first brine and we've completed everything, we do have enough to hit a few small sections of road, because we've missed a few with the contractors. They've missed them in the past, so they always leave us enough that we can go out with our trucks to do it. And it may not be the next day, but we'll get out there. And if you have other parking lots that are gravel that you need to do, just feel free to add those too, and we can add them to the list and get them done at the normal time or afterwards when we're out doing our stuff.
Yeah, quick question for you. So before, I know the first year we did the Liquidow, they suggested just one application because we thought it was going to be so much improved. We had to end up adding a Liquidow. Now, some townships did, some townships didn't.
Yeah.
The second year, which was last year, they said, we'll just go with two, just be covered, we'll have two applications, but the more you use it, the less we should have to do. So are you thinking this year, one or two applications?
I would stay with two yet, because some of it is now soaking in, but we are determining, we have taken samples and we do have some residual material in there, so that after another year, you might be able to get down to one, except on your high volumes. When you
Okay.
start talking your higher volume ones, you probably are still going to want to do two, because it's just going to stir it up and you're going to kick a lot of the material off the road. So if you're talking about, a normal, 500 to 600 car a day road, then it's probably going to be good after this year with one. And we found that several of them where we did two applications, each of the past 2 years, when we did those samples, it's already up. I mean, so I think by the end of this year, we'll be able to say, yeah, you're probably going to be at that point where one application a year is going to cover you.
Okay, good to know. That's good.
And then that's one other thing too, is if we ever do a gravel road improvement project for the township, we actually infuse that material now into the gravel before it's even laid down. So you're going to have a lot more material, and you will be putting down material that's already infused with it. So you'll be at a one application right from the get-go with it.
And we do have two of those. There's a petition out right now for Scout Camp and Traeger Road where that's actually included in the verbiage of the project. And then we'll have Sharman Road too, that would be included with too.
Yep.
So I guess with that, if we were to continue, a motion would be to approve two applications of the same roads which were applied to in 2022, adding Killingsworth Park.
I'll make that motion.
Okay, is there support? Okay, motion made by M. Cortate and support by Lyle. Any further discussion? And then we'll just work with you and where those one applications versus two are next year.
Sure.
And if we have any other
Jay will be
roads.
their direct contact on that. So if you keep in touch with him, he'll be able to help you out and get
Yeah.
it squared away.
Well, he saw the packet come through and he was texting me right away, so I appreciate that.
No problem.
He knows, he doesn't know the 8-hour, 10-hour workday, so that's a good thing for you.
Well, he's getting ready. He's going to have his first child here in July. So he's just prepping himself for no sleep mode now.
There you go. All those in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. Opposed by no. Okay, great. We'll get that information over to the Road Commission. I want to introduce Elisa Korn.
Do a quick report. I know
Yeah, absolutely.
like super
So Elisa's a new county road
I'm your
commissioner.
new County Road Commission representative. I do represent Green Lake also, which meets the same night as East Bay. You guys may be different than every other board meeting I've been to. You do your reports at the end of the year meetings.
We do them 4 times a year, quarterly reports.
Okay, well, I'm going to come to as many meetings as I can. I normally would speak in public comment. We don't ask to be on the agenda. Most townships have standing reports at the beginning, so we would just come and speak and leave. If you guys don't do that, I might be able to go to Green Lake at the beginning, do my standing report, and then come here and make it in time. And if I can't, I can't. But that's my intention. You know how to get in touch with me. If people are complaining about raccoons or deers, I will not come pick them up, but I will pass that on to our friends in Lansing to see what we can do about that legislation. We had the engineering department change the way that they do our reports for the board members so that they're easily divided up by township so that we can quickly come and do a report and give you guys updates on the same information we're getting as road commissioners. So I'm going to go quick through East Bay Township. This is under our state and federal aid projects, Hammond Road to Lafreniere. File review is mostly complete with a letter to file recommendation under review as requested by staff to MDOT. Once complete, final closeout approval will be obtained. So I'm basically just going to go through these every meeting that I can come to so that you guys know what's going on, kind of as we do. Your next one. Sorry, I am on a solid 2 hours of sleep for the last 3 days, so I normally will cut and paste this, and I'll be able to read it much better to you. The next one is the fiscal year 23 Parsons Road to East City Limits to 3 Mile Road in East Bay Township, no change in status. It's a .788 mile project, including crush and shape. So we will keep you updated on all of these. General fund projects, I do not see East Bay Township in here. Crack Seal program has a whole bunch of projects for East Bay Township, along with the Chip and Seal program. Obviously, we're working on our East-West Corridor project, and that does involve East Bay Township in many different ways. I know the bridge is in Garfield, but we're partners. We have that limited access mobility resolution between the two townships. So we have the Hammond and 4 Mile Road in East Bay Township, no change in status for the roundabout design. Final restoration requirements will be completed with a watering. I'm getting older. I have to zoom that in much bigger. my trifocals aren't working, completed with the watering in summer of '23. As-built plans and project file completion are being performed. And again, I'll do a much better job preparing this. So that's kind of our plan, is we'll be here to read you the updates that we get. You guys can tag me, or copy, I'm sorry, an email, and anything that goes to the road commission if you just want to double check that you're getting feedback, because these guys are filtering so many different things from all the townships. So basically, your road commission rep is just to help be an extra person to talk to if you can't get any questions answered. But I'll try to come as often as possible. It only will take a few minutes. I can speak in public comment. I don't need to be on the agenda or do anything like that at all if you guys don't do normal reports. So we can do that. Or if I come at the end, I was at Green Lake at the beginning. So that's it.
Okay.
You know how to get in touch with me. My email is on the road commission email. I know most of you, so you can probably find me. And I will let you know that Chuck does pick up roadkill sometimes. We've done it before together. So Beth, I'm just saying.
You know, my husband's a trapper, and he has been late to things because he's picked up roadkill,
So,
but...
he gets tired of the township
Yeah.
phone calls, and he will actually go pick them up. So I'm just throwing that out there. If
Yeah.
you're ever so inclined, it is.
I don't do that, but,
Okay, just throwing
I
that out
usually end up with the pelts somewhere in the basement of my house when my husband does that, and that's...
We definitely
yeah.
don't. But,
Yeah.
so that's it. Thank you, everyone. I apologize for the scatteredness
Yeah.
of it.
No, that's good. And January, April, July, and October are our 4 quarterly ones, so
Okay.
they'll definitely be on the agenda for those, for sure.
Okay, and Brad obviously is the much better one because they do the day-to-day operations.
Yep.
We're really more just a liaison for you and keep you updated on as much as we know, but he is the person
And I'll
to,
be at all of those except for potentially July of this year because I have them off on vacation. And so I may
Good
not
for
be
you.
able To be there.
Good for you.
But I'll send somebody for sure, probably Jay.
Sounds good.
All right?
so that's our plan. We'll keep communicating as best as we can, but our goal this year is to have much better communication with the township. So you'll be seeing us whether you want us on your agenda or not,
Thank you
but not
both
picking up
very-
roadkill.
Thank you both very much. Okay, with that, we'll move on to the City of Traverse City and Grand Traverse Regional Land Conservancy, and we have Glenn Chown here with the Conservancy and Frank Dettori here with the City of Traverse City, and they have a presentation on the Brown Bridge Quiet Area potential expansion. Thank you so much, and thank you for being here and for your patience.
Thank you for having us, and good evening. And I'm excited to talk to you about this amazing land protection and recreational enhancement project and why it's so important, not only to the region, but to East Bay Township. So without further ado, a little background. The 2 properties, as you can see from this map, are in East Bay Township, and they total 528 acres. 300 of those acres are the southern part of the Rotary property, the former Boy Scout property there. And that's in a brown color on the right. And then the 228 acres, the former, or the Mueller Trust property, is shown in red here. And that includes a 43-acre lake, Spring Lake. And this land together includes spectacular wildlife habitat. It's home to several rare species, trumpeter swans nest on the lake, red-shouldered hawk nest in the area, osprey, loons, all of which are state-threatened species. And then, of course, we have the American bald eagle, which is a state species of special concern. Sitting in the heart of the Boardman River watershed, and of course Spring Lake drains into Arbutus Lake, very important for water quality of both Arbutus Lake and the Boardman River watershed. Also very important for healthy habitats, biodiversity, and for people's health and wellness. It also provides passive recreational opportunities highlighted in this map, which we know are important to and valued by our entire community. by expanding the much-loved Brown Bridge quiet area by 40%, and also permanently protecting a trail corridor that connects the Boardman River Trail to the Brown Bridge quiet area and onto Muncie Lakes, and eventually the North Country Trail. Really an amazing recreational asset. Acquisition of these properties are aligned with the city-approved rec plan and the Brown Bridge Quiet Area Plan. And the city is pursuing a Michigan Natural Resources Trust Fund grant to fund the majority of the cost. The city of Traverse City expanded, there's history here, if you look on that 1993 Record Eagle story. On the right, there's a parcel in red. That is the beloved Grasshopper Creek addition to the Brown Bridge Quiet Area, which was acquired in 1993. Grand Traverse Conservation District manages the Brown Bridge Quiet Area for the city, does a great job. And of course, they are very enthusiastic about these additions and ready to take on the management responsibilities. User data shows a snapshot of the importance of this amenity to our community and our region. Even though the property is owned by the city, it is truly a beloved asset for the whole region, and particularly for East Bay Township. And this is particularly true in this time of coming out of the pandemic, where the outside was still open. People sought our trails and nearby access to nature in droves, and I think the data reflects that. This is one of the reasons we feel this project might be a good fit for the trust fund. The trust fund, generated by oil and gas revenues on state land, and a great deal of it in this township, which has one of the most active portions of the Niagaran Reef, as Beth knows, with her husband's livelihood. We're fortunate to have the trust fund in Michigan. I speak at conferences all over the United States. Michigan is the envy of the nation because we have a source such as the trust fund, which has provided over $1 billion in grants since it was signed into law by Governor Milliken in 1976, the great compromise over the Pigeon River fight. So $50 million has been provided in Grand Traverse County alone since that time. And East Bay Township, as you well know, has benefited from the trust fund, most recently nearly $600,000 for the Holiday Woods Recreation Area, which is, of course, a joint project of this township in the Conservancy, one we're very proud of and thankful for your leadership. The application, I'm happy to report, was submitted by the April 1 deadline, and they will be making a decision in December. The city intends to go to the voters in November to request a grant, a matching grant, matching funds of about $750,000 to match the $2.3 million trust fund grant. And the voters will be approving or not the use of Brown Bridge Trust Fund dollars to match the state trust fund dollars. So kind of an interesting oil and gas dollars matching oil and gas dollars. So that's the plan. Would love to have your support for this project. I know it would mean a lot to the trust fund board to know that this township also supports this project, and I'm happy to answer any questions, and Frank's here if you have any questions from the
I have
city's
a
perspective.
quick question. I've heard you tell this before, and I just wanted to maybe have you reiterate this. When you've shared the trust fund mechanism that the state of Michigan has with colleagues of yours from across the country, just kind of the reaction that you get.
Great jealousy, great envy, because to have a fund where you take a non-renewable resource, once you use oil and gas, it's gone. It was created millions and billions of years ago. So to have that concept of taking a non-renewable resource and then funding protection of land, funding trails, funding recreational access improvements that have lasting benefits to the people of Michigan, it's just an incredible concept and very successful. And to my knowledge, no other states have this. I talked to a lot of people in Wyoming and Texas where there's plenty of oil and gas, but they haven't had the wisdom or the vision to set aside just a portion of those revenues to benefit everyone and to benefit people for generations to come. We like to say keeping pure Michigan pure, but also making it accessible to everyone. That's really the purpose of the trust fund.
Frank, thank you for being here. If you don't mind stepping up, but just did you have anything to add from the city's perspective?
Thanks for having me, actually. Just a big thank you for considering supporting the resolution that's before you tonight, and to support Traverse City's application for the Michigan Natural Resource Trust Fund grant, and your support for this wonderful piece of property that can grow by nearly 40% by the result of some of these things, should they move forward. I think it's a feather in all our caps. We have this wonderful piece of land that sits within a township and actually that is owned by the city. And there isn't a day that I've been out there in the last 2 years, 2 years, where I haven't seen several cars, all kinds of folks out there working with the Grand Traverse Conservation District and the actual plan moving forward, and the implementation of some of the rule changes that were out there to try to control some of that use. It's just, I think it's just a win-win for everyone involved, and really super appreciate your support for this resolution.
Well, thank you. So we do have a resolution of support that's in the packet, and basically it just kind of, sets the premise and then is resolved that the township supports the acquisition grant application by the city of Traverse City to the DNR Trust Fund for the rare opportunity to add 520 acres to the valuable Brown Bridge Quiet Area, and that the township appreciates and values the collaborative efforts of the city and the Conservancy. And this is a really interesting scenario because you don't find every place where the city has then such a huge recreation area, in and out, in a neighboring township. Obviously, and this said this in the cover sheet, this started very differently. This started, 100 years ago or more, based on the fact that they were, securing a manner for their energy. But it's just evolved over time into this recreation area. And I'm really surprised and impressed by the city of Traverse City and the Conservancy for putting this package together to add this over 500 acres to this parcel, and appreciative of the Conservation's District in maintaining that facility too. So we do have a Brown Bridge ordinance in place that just solidifies the ability for City of Traverse City and East Bay Township to take care of any general law ordinance type violations on there if there were ever to be noise or anything like that. So, should this come to pass in a year from now, we'll be updating that, but that's a simple, very simple ordinance and a very simple update. So just if any of you remember doing that ordinance, last time we did that, it was in 2019, and I didn't remember it. Peter mentioned it to me when he saw it, and then I recalled after reading it, so. But any questions for the Conservancy or for the city?
Resolution number
17.
17.
Yeah. So are there any questions or a motion?
Make a motion to support resolution 2023-17, a resolution supporting the City of Traverse City, Michigan National Resource Trust Fund acquisition application for the proposed Brown Bridge Quiet Area addition.
Support. You know, I always have to support the ones that no one else will support, so sometimes I'm just going to step in and support the ones that I really think are cool. So, motion made by Lyle, supported by Friend. Any further discussion? Okay, we'll do a roll call vote. Ann?
And it was Resolution 17, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Lyle?
Yes.
Friend?
Yes.
Bartlett?
Yes.
Escorted?
Yes.
M. Cortade?
Yes.
Walters?
Yes.
All right, very good. Thank you so much for being here to present. Thank you so much for, I know the immense amount of work that's gone into bringing this to this point and to getting an application in, and the work to come, because these aren't just easily granted like that, and the work after is a lot too, so much appreciated.
You know where I'll be in December.
Yeah,
Hopefully an early Christmas present.
There you go.
right, right.
Awesome.
Yes, exactly. Thank you.
If there's any questions about the tribal application, I can.
Yes, we're going to hit that right now, so if you wouldn't mind just hanging tight for a second. So with that, you know that we'll move on to the 2% tribal application through the land, submitted by the Land Conservancy. We've done this before for Mount Holiday, and this is a pass-through grant. 2% tribal applications have to be done by a local unit of government. Traditionally, they're done by the county, but they can be done by other units as well. We've done them through Mount Holiday. They did theirs for $25,000. They were successful. We got a check for $25,000. We wrote a check for $25,000 just to pass through. So this is an application that they are doing for some of the, do you just want to give like a 2-second recap of what you're using it for? It's on the
Yes.
property up here?
Yeah, it's on the Mitchell Creek Meadows Preserve, the Don and Jerry Olson Nature Preserve, which, by the way, we love, and we love living in East Bay Township. So we're now here, it is our home, and we're very happy to be your neighbors. This is a 2% request for $50,000. The funding would be used to restore biodiversity and manage invasive species, because it's a former golf course with a lot of autumn olive that has moved in. And also, excitingly enough, to complete the construction of a universally accessible trail system interior to the preserve, not the same as the proposed safe routes to school, the 3-mile, but it will connect to that. And then it'll give families and people and children and kids at schools nearby access not only to the conservation center, but to some really special wildlife viewing areas. So that's the proposal, and we're pretty excited about it, and
Great.
would love to have your support.
Great, thank you, Glenn. The proposed motion is to move to approve the Grand Traverse Regional Land Conservancy 2% tribal grant application and to submit the grant to the Grand Traverse Band of Ottawa and Chippewa Indians on behalf of the Conservancy. Is there anyone who is willing to make that motion?
I'll make the motion.
Is there support?
Support.
Okay, motion is made by Escortate and supported by Walters. All those in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed by no? Terrific. So we will follow up. We'll get that submitted, and have your staff have a reminder on the calendar to make sure that we do get it submitted, and happy to do that for you.
And I've already talked to some people at the tribe, and they're very excited about this.
Oh, that's great.
The tribe will be involved in both the restoration and some of the interpretive work on the
trail.
Nice. Very cool.
They're excited about it.
Thanks a lot, Glenn, for being here. Appreciate it.
Happy to be here.
Okay, with that, we have Rob Carson is here. Rob, talk about thanking somebody for their patience. Thank you for your patience.
My pleasure. Just apologize for texting in the audience. My son just lost his second front tooth, and I was getting a huge gap.
No sweet corn.
That's awesome. Well, I hope you have your wallet out because, you know, there's a tooth fairy.
Exactly. I'm assuming the presentation is loaded.
You know what?
If not, I can plug my, ooh, I don't know if I can plug into,
I can pull it down off of, did you email it to me?
you know what, Hannah would have, but I have here.
Who would I have gotten it from, Hannah?
Probably from Hannah. Probably, that should be on that email.
Oh, oops. Come on. You're gonna email, you wanna email it to me?
Yes, as I connect to Wi-Fi.
Good luck in here.
You have your password?
It's Explore East Bay with capital E, and capital B.
Is that the private or is that just the EBCT?
It's the EVCT.
Explore lowercase?
It's, the three words are upper, the
It's
first
Explore
letter
East
of the
Bay.
three words are uppercase. Explore East Bay.
First letter of each word is capitalized. We could just plug yours in here too.
I'm looking, we don't, I just have an HDMI.
Yeah, I've got,
Oh, you have HDMI?
yeah.
And I have
I just saw
another,
that connection. Oh, perfect. Let's just do that.
There you go. And that should pop right up for you as soon as it
Did,
registers.
and then it just said it failed on me, but we're good. We can get to it right here.
Yeah, there we go.
it's always that panicky moment.
Well, there's a better system coming, right, Sue?
Yes.
We had a meeting with,
Leah.
Leah, yes. And that they're putting together an RFP for updating the system. So, thank you, Rob. Would you introduce yourself?
Yeah, certainly.
and-
Thank you, Beth. It's a pleasure to meet you, commissioners, board members. My name is Rob Carson. I am the Community Development Director with Networks Northwest Community Development Department. I'm a resident of Manistee County, Northeast Manistee County. I've been with Networks Northwest for about 3 years now. Prior to that, I was the County Planning Director at Manistee County, and prior to that, I worked outside of Charlotte, North Carolina, and was actually affiliated with the MPO down there in the Charlotte region while I was there. So with that, I have a presentation this evening, and I'm sure Beth's been keeping you abreast of all the ongoings with TTCI over the years, and the now eventual establishment of the Metropolitan Planning Organization. And with that, we'll go ahead and get started. So here's a little bit of a history of the coordinated planning effort that's been ongoing since 1988. There was a task force that was basically developed back in 1988 to explore the possibility of an east-west bypass or a corridor around Traverse City. That morphed into a planning coordinated group that was recommended by the Michigan Department of Transportation to overlook future and proposed projects that would take place within the region. They anticipated that eventually the greater Traverse area would achieve the population threshold that would outline the necessity to establish a metropolitan planning organization. That population threshold is 50,000. That did not occur with the 1990 census. It did not occur with the 2000 census. It did not occur with the 2010 census. In 2015, that group, which was formerly called TC Talis, changed their identification, their name to TTCI, the Traverse Transportation Coordinating Initiative. They did that to encompass a more regional name to the organization, as well as to look more in depth into providing resources for local units of government, transportation, and transit agencies for the region. They've been operating under that name since 2016. As of 2020, we did achieve the urbanized threshold. That time frame that the census data was released to us was supposed to be in September of 2021. We kept receiving delays of 3 months, 6 months, until we eventually were notified by MDOT in late 2022. It was actually December 29th that we received the email that we were formally now in urbanized area and met the requirements and the threshold of 50,000 to move forward as an MPO. So what is an MPO? It's a Metropolitan Planning Organization. Is basically a policy body that comes together, coordinates, develops recommendations and consensus around future transportation projects, and then works to implement those projects. And that is the formal definition. So that policy body is comprised of representatives from local units of government. It is comprised of representatives from transportation agencies such as the Road Commission and the Michigan Department of Transportation. And it's also comprised of representatives from transit agencies such as Beta. They are a cooperative decision-making body. They gather stakeholders and the public to identify needs by the public, as well as those by the local units of government for all modes of transportation, whether we're talking about vehicular, whether if we had a deep marine port here, they would be incorporated as well. The airport authority is incorporated as an advisory to the committee, and discussions are ongoing with them. As it says, it's federally required for areas of 50,000 or more, and it tackles the 3 C's of transportation planning: comprehensive, cooperative, and continual. So this is the Traverse City urbanized area that you'll see here in purple. The reason that you see gaps is those are called skips and jumps. The methodology that they utilize to determine our urbanized areas allows for gaps up to a mile between census blocks to be captured and counted as urbanized. That's very important for areas like we have here, as well as for mountainous regions. We have a lot of wetlands, we have a lot of lakes, we have a lot of areas that are undevelopable. If we were not able to skip over those areas, it would be very, very difficult for us to achieve a contiguous urbanized area. And thus you see the designation as displayed before you. So a metropolitan planning area is determined by an agreement between the Metropolitan Planning Organization and the governor. The transportation process is carried out within that MPO, which is then transformed to the metropolitan planning area. And so I'll explain that more. I have a map coming up here that'll explain that a little bit in more detail. The 20-year focus for transportation planning efforts for the Metropolitan Planning Organization is planned for the MPA, the Metropolitan Planning Area. What you see here is the recommended MPA boundary proposed by the Michigan Department of Transportation. What is important to note here is all of the local units, except for Whitewater Township, have a portion of designated urbanized area within them. Whitewater Township is the only township that does not have any of those census blocks that are designated urbanized areas. What the Michigan Department of Transportation is looking at going forward is 20 years projecting where will the urbanized area spread to, where will that population threshold be achieved further. They are recommending that Whitewater Township be included in the MPA boundary because they forecast growth into Whitewater Township. As planners with Networks Northwest, we also anticipate growth further out within Paradise Township, Kingsley, Elmira, Lake Ann area, and probably Sutton's Bay. Those forecasts from our staff members don't really push the need to incorporate those communities at this point in time. We don't know if it'll be a 20-year time frame or a 30-year time frame, and it's something that the MPO, once established, can tackle further down the line to incorporate those communities. As you see with the representation on the map currently, many members have been participating with the Traverse Transportation Coordinating Initiative up to this point in time. They include, obviously, East Bay Township, Acme Township, Traverse City, Garfield Township, Elmwood Township, and we are reaching out to Long Lake Township, Green Lake Township, Blair, Bingham Township, as well as Whitewater Township. We have had strong communication from Peninsula Township, Green Lake Township, Elmwood Township, and Long Lake Township that they are likely to participate. At what level, we're unsure. And we have some communication with Bingham Township that they would like a presentation and are possibly considering participating. Whitewater Township has not been very receptive to our asks to come provide a presentation to them. I'm trying to communicate with the supervisor further on that. So currently in Michigan, there's 13 MPOs. You can see them all displayed here on the map. The boundaries of their metropolitan planning areas are displayed and transparent. The vast majority of them for the various MPOs extend out to county boundaries. You'll see a few that do not, such as the MAC boundary around Holland, as well as down in southern Michigan. We would be the 14th established MPA and MPO in the state of Michigan. We would be the furthest north. Our closest neighbors would be Shoreline, which is Muskegon, as well as Midland. Midland was the last MPO to be established, and that was back in 2014. MDOT recommends that MPOs and the model in the state of Michigan is that they're seated with regional planning agencies, hence why Networks Northwest has been leading the coordination from the TC Talis days until now. There is really only two models in the state of Michigan to seat within a regional planning agency or to be a standalone organization. Speaking with Midland, and I know Maya, their executive director, has spoken to the TTCI policy board. It is very difficult to operate on your own, just due to funding levels and difficulty in maintaining staff and so forth. Seating within a regional planning agency provides the benefits of having a seated accounting department, audits that are already occurring that meet federal and state guidelines, staffing with additional land use planners and community development departments, which all regional planning agencies have, and then obviously the networking and coordination that's already occurring within those regions. So the typical MPO structure, and this is pretty much modeled right now by TTCI. TTCI has a policy board comprised of members of local units of government. It is completely autonomous from Networks Northwest. Networks Northwest has no oversight. The Networks Northwest board has no oversight over the TTCI board. It is completely comprised of those transportation agencies, representatives from Leelanau County Road Commission, Grand Traverse County Road Commission, representative from the county board, as well as the townships that are currently participating. With that, the policy board has elected officers. They serve as an executive committee. They basically meet informally with staff with Networks Northwest to discuss items that would be proposed for the agenda. They are then placed on the agenda, brought before the full policy board. We also operate with a technical committee that is comprised of planners and engineers with our transportation agencies as well as our local units of government. Claire Carner serves in that role for East Bay Township currently, as well as other planners with local units of government. The Citizen Advisory Committee is the one piece that we do not have in place currently within the organizational structure. That can be formed a couple of different ways. It's completely at the discretion of the policy board and development of how that is outlined within the bylaws of the organizational structure. It could be an actual standing committee with appointments that are made, or it can be handled through the use of public input sessions and public forums that are regularly scheduled throughout the year to gain any insight from the public that is desired. And then ultimately, that entire structure is served by professional staff. So the policy committee, you can tell I've given this a couple times. I've just kind of speeded through it when it's on the images. So it's basically what I just said with the policy committee or board. We do have members from the Michigan Department of Transportation that are participating and more heavily so in our meetings now, particularly those that are with the statewide planning office for MPOs. We had Dan Wagner attending regularly, who is our local engineer for MDOT for the North Region. And we now have a transportation planner, Heidi, who works for MDOT, and she is attending regularly as well. The Planning and Technical Committee basically oversee and review information and then provide recommendations. They advise the policy board. They are not the formal decision-making body. The MPO functions, it looks to establish a fair and impartial setting for discussion of transportation projects and plans that encompass those projects, and then ultimately looks to how those projects can be implemented. Evaluates the various alternatives. They develop the three transportation plans that are displayed: the long-range regional transportation plan, the transportation improvement plan, and then the unified work plan. Each of those I'll go into a little more detail in a moment here. They involve the public, which is required statutorily by both the federal and the state level for MPOs to incorporate the public and public comments into each of these transportation planning documents. So a long-range transportation plan basically looks out 20 years. It's kind of a blue sky vision. Any and all alternatives that are desired and would wish to be discussed and narrowed down in the future are placed in that 20-year plan. As we move through the 20-year plan, it is updated every 5 years, and projects that are completed are noted as being completed. The plans that I've been reviewing list the successes and the failures so that you can disseminate that information on further to new policy board members, to staff, so that you don't lose that level of knowledge when putting the plans together initially. When we're looking out 50 years, the same plan will be updated and revised and revised and revised every 5 years. The TIP is a 5-year plan. This plan basically takes the projects that have made it down the funnel and are likely to be implemented within a 5-year time frame placed within a single document. With those individual projects, we start forecasting cost estimates, time frames, and feasibility, as well as gathering additional public input, because those projects are likely to be implemented within that 5-year plan. The Unified Work Program is a 1 to 2 year plan. Those projects that funnel down out of that TIP plan, the 5-year plan, are placed into the Unified Work Program. Final engineering estimates are completed, and you actually get into design phases for actual implementation of the transportation alternatives or projects that are likely to move forward. This is updated annually. In my discussions with MPOs around the state, they actually are looking at updating these every 2 years with minor updates every year, because it is a lot of work to get those cost estimates, to get those designs completed within a single year time frame. You're constantly always working on it. So the funding implications. Currently, Traverse City receives $385,000 in small urban program funds and $23,000 in SPR funds for TTCI. The $385,000 go towards small urban projects currently. The $23,000, it comes into Networks Northwest for our assistance with setting up and maintaining TTCI. So it handles the accounting, this session said handles. It covers a portion of staff time, accounting, as well as the other requirements, projects that we undertake over the year. After MPO designation, those small urban funds for the urbanized area of Traverse City will be replaced with $1 million STP, small MPO funds. $228,000 in consolidated planning grant funds will be made available to help maintain and organize and staff the MPO. So what we're talking about here is additional staff. There is a lot of workload that comes with maintaining an MPO, with the transportation documents, with the coordination with the federal government, with the coordination with the state government, all of which is legislatively required. $120,000 come in for carbon reduction funds. Those can be utilized for anything from complete streets to non-motorized to signal timing. Anything that would reduce carbon vehicular outputs. The funding for the Rural Task Force, and this is important, will not change. The only thing that does change is if a Rural Task Force transportation project is going to be completed within the MPA boundary, but is not located in the urbanized area, the MPO Policy Board has final approval over that project. The standard in the state of Michigan, though, is basically the MPO Policy Boards rubber stamp those approvals. They rely on the expertise of those individuals that are involved with the Rural Task Force and taking their advisement and just approve those projects. So does everybody understand what exactly I'm saying? You have the urbanized area, which is the actual census blocks. Those receive that $1 million fund that can be spent within that MPA boundary. It goes out to the township boundaries. Portion of those townships are still considered rural, even though there is urbanized in a portion of them. If that project is going to take place in a rural area but is within that MPA boundary, then the policy board has oversight over it. I've just received several questions on that, so.
What if it crosses?
What's that?
What if they cross?
Cross jurisdictional lines, it would still be MPO policy board, so it would fall within the MPA boundary. So here's our current timeline. As I stated, we were originally supposed to be notified of this going way back to October of 2021. What we had was basically a 2-year time frame with a lot to do. Got narrowed down to about 6 months. And so now it's all hands on deck to make sure that we meet all the boxes and the requirements for the MPO checklist that's been provided to us by MDOT. We are looking to get intergovernmental agreements before the governor's desk by October 1st. That is the start of the 3-year fiscal year for the MPOs in the state of Michigan. If it does not make it by October 1st, there are methods, I believe, to amend, but one of the options is to just wait 3 years and then initiate the MPO at the start of the next fiscal year. And I don't believe there's any desire to do that from any agency staff, any local units of government, transportation agencies, as well as MDOT. So we're basically hosting the public meetings at this point in time to the local units of government, the transportation agencies, Beta. I've been meeting with a number of stakeholders who will not be seated with the MPO Policy Board, but we're asking for them to come and serve as advisors on the technical committee. That coordination is occurring with the Grand Traverse Band of Ottawa and Chippewa Indians, TCAPS, the Airport Authority, Northern Michigan College, DDA, among others. So these meetings are scheduled to wrap up in early May. While this is ongoing, I've been drafting the Unified Work Program, which had not been developed for the MPO. That is due to the Michigan Department of Transportation by June 1st for their approval. I need to get it before the TTCI Policy Board at the May meeting. And the documents I'm looking at are anywhere from 120 to 200 pages. Beyond that, we will start holding meetings of the TTCI Policy Board for those units of government, transportation agencies, and transit agencies that have passed their resolutions of support. Basically, the resolution of support that's been provided to you, as well as to everybody else, outlines that you're interested in having a discussion and you want a seat at the table. The reason the resolution of support is occurring in 2023, even though East Bay has been involved with TTCI, MDOT doesn't look at it like that. They look at it as urbanized designation occurred December 29th, 2022. We need to know that these players are on board and want a seat at the table for negotiations and discussions going forward. The resolution of support does not commit you financially to any degree. It does not commit you to even maintaining a seat on the policy board. It basically just secures a seat at the table. Those discussions, when all those units of government, transportation agencies, and transit agencies are seated, will speak to the development of an interlocal governmental agreement. That is ultimately the agreement that will go before the governor's desk. That interlocal agreement will speak to what role those individuals that are going to participate will serve as, whether they want to serve as a policy member, whether they want to just serve as advisory, whether or not there's a local match policy. There is a requirement of a 18.14% match of the consolidated planning grant. Comes out to about $42,000 some change per year. That local match is borne by those that sit on the policy board and have voting rights on that policy board. So members can be advisors on the technical committee and do not have to pay dues unless they so desire. Those that are on the policy board that are decision-making bodies are required to pay towards that local match. Let me see, our designation checklist. At our last meeting, the TTCI board did formally approve to maintain TTCI as the formal name for the MPO. There's been discussion of the MPA boundary, but really that some of these things can't be handled until we start to have those interlocal governmental discussions, so we have everybody at the table. But I know as staff, our recommendation at minimum would be the MDOT recommended boundary, as they've been performing a lot of analysis. TTCI is operating under a set of bylaws currently. Those bylaws are going to probably have to be amended 6 times over the next year. Just seeing how things go and how processes work with MPOs. The decision, not the decision, but the revisions that occur to the bylaws are largely uncertain until we get into those intergovernmental agreements and figure out how the voting is going to work, whether there's weighted voting, how that weighted voting occurs, and who's actually going to be participating as policy board members versus technical and advisory committee members. The organizational structure of the MPO will largely follow what I displayed earlier, with the policy board being completely autonomous from Networks Northwest Board, and as such, the transportation planning staff would serve the MPO board, but be incorporated into the hierarchy of the community development department. The policy board membership comes through with interlocal intergovernmental agreements, and the location of the MPO would have to be designated as well in that agreement. So MDOT, their roles and responsibilities have really been to act as a liaison and to facilitate these conversations between the local units of government, our agency, and the federal government. And they've been really aiding us in the process. They've been very, very, very hands-on, very, very, very good at communicating to us. I'm confident anytime I send out an email or I pick up the phone and make a call, I'm going to get a response in a very timely manner, which has been very nice. I should mention that Beta is going through a separate but parallel process right now. They will be incorporated as a policy member to the MPO board that is required for transit agencies, but they are morphing now due to the threshold achieved from a small urban transit agency, or excuse me, from a rural transit agency to a small urban transit agency. Processes are parallel, and there's no real intermixing except that they'll be working with us as the MPO policy board. MDOT participates, they participate in all of our meetings. They will review and transmit all the federally required documents and ensure that we are meeting all of the statutory requirements. So I know that's a lot of information. And I apologize, I really apologize, we should have had a year and a half to do this. So, I mean, we were scheduling meetings late 2021 initially, and early 2022, and we ended up canceling all of our meetings. I know I was supposed to be here a year ago, and we had to cancel meetings because MDOT's saying, pull back, we don't know if you achieved the threshold, and then all of a sudden now it's like, go, go, go. So, yeah, it's been a little bit of a whirlwind.
So the resolution will come back before us at a subsequent meeting. I had an article in here from just kind of going over some of the general information that's been in the TC ticker about the MPO. Does anyone have any specific questions for Rob? Go ahead.
What if Whitewater Township decides not to participate?
So that's a very good question. If a unit of government decides not to participate as a policy board member, it doesn't dictate the MPA boundary. So the MPA boundary can be designated whatever whatever the MPO policy board decides that they want that boundary to be, and transportation projects can be conducted or implemented anywhere within that boundary. What it does is say that there's a project proposed for the M72 corridor in Whitewater Township that impacts local Act 51 roads. They won't have a seat on the table to say whether or not they support it, whether or not they support the cost estimate. It takes them out of the decision-making process. And that goes for any local unit of government that decides to not participate as a policy board member. Transportation projects can still occur within those local units of government, but they may not have a say if they're not on the policy board as a voting member for the discussion.
And right now, we pay annually about $2,000 to TTCI, or into this network and framework right now. I think we've seen some really rough numbers, but we don't have any hard numbers to share with the township on what that'll be.
If you say 10, there's 10 total participants, which we anticipated probably be 10 or something like that. I mean, you're looking at $4,000 if it's broken up evenly. But the models around the state vary so much according to population thresholds, to some MPOs, actually quite a few of them give a larger percentage vote to the road commission. So maybe each road commission, in some circumstances, if there's two counties, will each get 25% of the vote, and then the rest is broken up 50. None of that is determined. Networks Northwest and Northwest staff have no input on how that's determined. We are basically going to be the convener, seat everybody at the table, provide the best available information that we have. We'll have MDOT representatives there, and then it's an open discussion. And the policy board needs to figure out exactly how they want to handle that moving forward.
So I was just due to say, I've seen the numbers that we have, although they're not certain, they're not hugely, it's not like you're looking at 20,000 versus 2,000. I mean, yes, 4,000 is doubling that number, but it's a pretty limited contribution at this point. And it doesn't seem like it'll be outrageously more.
One other piece I can add that I didn't speak to is grants. It opens up availability of funding from a whole lot of pools that are only available to metropolitan planning organizations. And how that can work in a local unit of government's favor is if East Bay Township really had a transportation project that they wanted to see completed, and there wasn't a ton of support from the rest of the policy members to dig into that $1 million and do it immediately, maybe it's further down the list, East Bay Township could specifically ask the MPO to draft a grant application to whatever federal source we're speaking about that's only available to MPOs, and then they can commit the match, and then all the policy board just has to approve the application and vote in favor. So there's those things that can kick in as well.
And at the last meeting that we had, the TTCI meeting, Brad Kluczynski had mentioned, because I didn't realize this, for them, it's not just the funding of like the $1 million. It's that it puts them in a different designation and opportunity to access additional funds and grants as well. So it's important to them as well.
Yep. It's very important to them, it's very important to Leelanau County Road Commission, and we've actually heard from Benzie County. But without a unit of government or any urbanized area designated in Benzie, it's a little too early.
So Rob, two things, the resolution and then the interlocal agreement.
Yes.
So I know you sent me a draft of the resolution.
And I sent a revised one too.
And that's what, okay, that's what I was going to ask. Are we good to go with that?
Yes, that resolution should be clean and ready to go.
Okay.
There's a colon, that should be a semicolon, that was pointed out.
Okay, we can deal with that. We can deal with that. So we'll bring that back to this board. You'll probably, is everyone in supportive of continuing the process that we've been involved with for so long? Does anyone have any concerns or question, or, large looming questions? Okay, all right.
I get, the one question I'd have
Yeah.
is, I want to see who all within Grand Traverse County is joining forces. I mean, I look at Garfield Township, I look at East Bay, but then what about the rest of them?
I anticipate Garfield Township, Peninsula Township, I actually saw, so we had the initial members of TTCI that have been meeting for years. And when the MPA boundary came out from MDOT, I started contacting Long Lake Township, Peninsula Township, Green Lake Township. Long Lake Township contacted me within 3 minutes of receiving the emails I get here. We're getting overrun by a sprawl. We need help. Peninsula Township, their meeting is the same night as Peninsula Townships. It's the same night as Garfield Townships at the exact same time. I have the other staff planner. We unfortunately, but to her credit, I wish her very well. We lost our transportation planner about a month ago. She went to MEDC. I was working very, very close with her on all things TTCI related. Before she came on board, I was the primary staff following Matt McCauley to TTCI. We have another transportation planner, Matthew, who was working with other MDOT programs, and he had stepped away to work on other land use planning practices and processes that were ongoing. He has stepped in to fill with those in the meantime while we look to hire another staff planner for transportation for the programs that aren't MPO related. He is going to be at Garfield Township that night. He was the only person that I felt could answer the questions and handle it effectively. I have other planners, but I don't want to thrust them into the spotlight. In Peninsula Township, when I spoke with the clerk on the phone, she said, we don't need the presentation. We don't need you there. We want to see at the table. We're going to pass a resolution. It's like Peninsula's coming on immediately. Elmwood Township will sign on. I have all the confidence that Jeff Shaw and his board are comfortable with that presented to them. I am confident Garfield Township as well. I'm pretty confident in Green Lake Township, just in the discussions I've had. I'm very confident in Long Lake Township, just through the conversations that I've had. Blair Township has not been very receptive. They're not even emailing or calling me back, so I don't know. I've sent them a couple emails. I've called the supervisor and the clerk twice now and left messages.
But remember, if someone doesn't sign on, that's, I mean, they lose their voice.
Yeah, well,
It's not, it doesn't hurt us, so to speak.
Yep.
They lose their
Yeah,
voice.
so to speak to that the requirement legislatively is only to capture the local units of government that have 75% of that urbanized area. So this right here, where 75% of this population lives, which you have all these areas because of the density, they meet urbanized, but 75% of the population lives right here.
And you already have
And so
Elmwood,
those
Garfield,
units of government that
East
have
Bay.
that, if East Bay, Traverse City, and Garfield Township sign in, that's all that's needed. You want transportation agencies, and you want everybody involved that's in the MPA boundary, but federally, legislatively required speaking, those three units of government would meet the requirements.
Yeah, but the split in the funding would
Be a little bit
fall
higher.
on those
Yes.
that.
It certainly would.
Yeah, and there is still a lot of unknowns on that too, because like you said, it's different in every MPO,
Yeah,
and
how it's-
some, the road commission took on more,
Yeah, that's
some,
it. So if that's, and I should have said that, if, in those cases where the road commission had more weight towards the voting, they were paying substantially more of a local match than the local units.
What about the interlocal agreement? Do we have that
I
yet?
have a couple of draft interlocal agreements.
Okay.
That's coming out to the next board meeting, to the TTCI members,
Okay.
it'll be in the packet. I'll be quite honest, I'm not an attorney, but I've written a lot of legal documents and contracts and agreements, and I'm not really, it's missing a number of pieces in what we need. The sample that was given to me was Midland. Midland only incorporates the road commission and the city of Midland, basically, as the local commitments. We are going to be much more complex because I see much greater buy-in from all the local units of government wanting to be a part of the decision-making process. So there isn't a piece in that interlocal agreement that speaks to the specificity of those townships that want to be on the policy board, what their weight would be, how the voting is determined, and then the makeup of like the technical and advisory committee, like incorporating the Grand Traverse Band, incorporating the airport, incorporating the college, those pieces aren't in those agreements. So I'm trying to find another modified one. I have a Michigan Association of Regions meeting coming up, and I'm going to ask at that meeting if I can have some copies. It's quick for me to hit all the regional executive directors at once and get that information.
Rob, what's the timeline for so we'll do the resolution as
Yep.
soon as we can
So-
at our next meeting.
Yeah.
What is the timeline for the interlocal agreement?
I would like to start those conversations in June.
Okay.
Yep, at our next TTCI board meeting, some items for the agenda that I'm going to propose to the executive committee are an actual step list of what we need to do and why it's required. The time frame of getting it to the governor's desk, MDOT says October 1st. Well, I know you can't submit a document to the governor on September 15th. So when does the governor's agents or whoever really need that document from us to be able to get it approved? Because regardless of what happens at the policy board with the interlocal agreement, it's going to have to come back to each respective elected body that has authorization over that unit of government for your final decision to say, yes, we're going to participate because we agree with the conditions that are in the interlocal agreement. So that's why the resolution doesn't have a lot of weight to it outside of just saying, take a seat at the table and participate in the discussion. I'd anticipate we need to have, this is just tough, they shrunk this time frame so quick on us, and I'm so upset about it. But we're gonna have to have those figured out by middle of July
Okay.
at the latest. So that's the other thing I gotta propose to the TTCI board is like, we're gonna have to have crunch time and have a few meetings here.
Okay.
Special, so.
All right, well, sounds good. Any other further questions? Thanks for being here tonight. Thanks
My
for
pleasure.
presenting. Appreciate it. All right.
My pleasure. And Beth knows how to get a hold of me, so any questions you have, track me down, and I'm happy. Phone or email works.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, with that, we'll move on to, let's see, we have staffing update and then minutes. So staffing update, first thing we have in here is we have a job description for part-time buildings and groundskeeper. And the description kind of goes over why we were taking a look at this at this time. Just seems like if we're going to try this, it would be an opportune time to do that. We do have the RFPs for lawn care, snow removal, and janitorial services ready to go if we choose to do that. As well, you've got the job description for like a 20-hour week permanent part-time, but we also as well have the standing full-time one. So with that, what is the pleasure of the board and questions or comments?
Do we really think we'll find somebody to do part-time? Or we don't know what the contracts would be, so is there an egg and chicken thing here?
So the RFPs would go out and they have a return date of May 1st. So I've talked with a couple of the lawn maintenance places. And while that is a quick turnaround, it does put it for people who are more interested, right? And that may be difficult. I was just at a store this weekend and I happened to see a lady with an emblem on her jacket of like one of the lawn maintenance places that I would send it out to. I mean, we'll put this on the web and that sort of thing, but I would reach out to some companies. And that was one, and I'm like, you know, they're full. And she said, we could take on more, but we can't hire more right now. We're having trouble hiring. So that might be an issue, but that might be an issue on our end too. So, you know, it would be good to have the flexibility that if we were to try the part-time and we didn't find someone, that I would definitely turn around and post for that full-time.
Yeah, I think, timing could be the issue, so locking into having to have a part-time and contract would be difficult. So if you find you're not getting our responses from the RFPs, you could do the full-time.
Yes, yep, we could make adjustments as we go along, yep. Sue?
Maybe it's purely selfish. I'll just preface it that way to begin with. We're looking at Bob tears down, our current full-time person tears down these rooms to get them ready for elections. They take the equipment to the different sites during the business day. When it's not during the business day, I call in family members or board members, commissioners for the election commission to help with the heavy lifting. I'm not getting any younger. If we have a part-time person, we don't have contract services. We don't have other companies that are going to come in and do that for us. There are things that are done all the time where I still feel, even when it's not an election year, a full-time buildings and grounds person holds a lot of value and merit. So I would rather we not go down that path. I also understand it's very difficult for some businesses, companies to attract full-time, but I do believe with the package that we offer as a township, we would be an employer of choice. We could attract some nice help. So I did want to add on the properties. Wouldn't we want to put the Hammond Road?
Yeah, I thought of that
Water
later.
tower?
Yeah. Well, and actually, Holiday Woodlands,
Right.
but there's nothing really that they do on either of those with, you know, Holiday Woodlands, Mount Holiday does most of that. So, but still, we would put those properties on there. Yeah, we would add those.
Nothing happens at the Pine.
Exactly,
Right.
exactly.
But they have.
I noticed
about
that
the mile
after.
walk trail and the dog park and everything at the Hammond
Yeah.
Road property. So
Yeah.
that would have,
It would, but again, that would, you know, we would have the contract as well, too, so. But let me put those both on there. I had remembered the Holiday Woodland, but I've forgotten the water tower. Like I said, we really don't do anything at all over there right now, other than shut off the water for the trees. And we have a contractor do that, so, anyway. Yeah, I understand what you're saying about the elections. I know Bob is very helpful. I mean, heck, I know I've been in here doing the wires for the stuff when we break it down and put it back up for the election. But I would say with that, just like when you hire, you know, help for the elections, we could hire and help for that as well, too. I mean, Garfield Township follows a model similar to this. They don't have somebody full-time who does this. They contract out these things. Yeah, Mindy?
I'll be next.
In the knowledge, skills, and abilities required, it says possess a valid Michigan motor vehicle license. I don't know if this is covered by the next bullet. It probably is, but do we want to add that is insurable by our insurance company?
We make sure they have a good driving record and that we can insure them, yeah. I mean, I think that's already covered. This is the way we've operated with these bullet points, and we haven't had any issues.
Okay, I'm thinking that it's probably covered in the employee manual, but I just want to double check that.
Yeah.
Well, my concern is that, as a township, we've made a substantial investment in being self-sufficient, I guess, as you could say, with the tractors, the mowers, the trucks, and everything else. Even though they would get use, I still think that a full-time guy person is worth more than just contracting and out services. Now, that doesn't mean, like, for instance, snow plowing, you might contract that out as a separate service just because it is what it is. The other part of it is I was around when this first all started back in the 90s, and the Parks Commission basically wanted someone to help in the parks. And then that morphed from somebody helping in the parks to this whole buildings and grounds department. The parks are controlled strictly by our Parks Commission. Really, as a township board, our only connection with them should be the financial end of it. They're the ones that make the decision of what they want to do up there, and they have that legal right since they are an elected body. So if you were to go this route, I think they're the ones that should be making those decisions. And that's just a matter of policy. I'm not one way or the other. I just feel that they need to start taking more responsibility, and this probably get me in trouble, but I see them now as becoming more of just a ideas kind of thing, and they pass it off, and then we tend to make it a lot of discussion about what goes on. And we really shouldn't be discussing what's going on in the parks. That's the whole purpose of having a Parks Commission, is to take the workload off of this board and staff in this building. But I do think that a full-time person has more value than just getting it done. And since we have made a large commitment and a large, investment in it, I think it should be continued.
Mindy?
When I was a Parks Commissioner, I was told that operation and maintenance of the parks was not the role of the Parks Commission,
Who told you that?
the Township Board.
Yeah, but that's, go to
Well-
MTA, when we go to MTA, ask those questions.
This person is an employee of the township, and so you can't really have a Parks Commission oversee an employee. That doesn't work so well. They're not they're a board. They don't supervise the direct day-to-day activities of this position. So, and as far, I agree with you, we could choose to subcontract out even having a full-time position, but with the trade-off in time with that, then I would probably look at that full-time position being more of like buildings and groundskeeper and maybe like a recreational planner or something, like that, which you'd really have to find a very, very specific person to be able to do like some programming with some facilities. Not that that doesn't exist, it does, but that's a tough one. And again, I think, it's not an election year this year, and so and with a retirement, you can't just take someone who's full-time and then say, well, let's try subcontracting this out, because then you have all of their salary, plus all of their benefits, plus those contracts. So it seems like an opportune time with our groundskeeper retiring to maybe try to see if we can get those contracts, see if there's somebody who's interested in that part-time model like Garfield utilizes. And I will agree there are some benefits to having somebody full-time, but at the same time, I think this model definitely works for others, and I think could work for us, if we're able to get, if we're able to find that person. If we're not, then surely we would look at a full-time person. But one of the things that makes us really viable is our benefits are quite high and are quite expensive. And so, that makes those contracts, much more feasible. Glenn, did you have something?
I got several things, but go ahead. Finish
Oh,
up
no,
what you-
I'm done. Go ahead.
The thing is, I got some concerns with contracts and everything else. I'm not sure that we're gonna get in the wintertime, if you gotta plow 3 times, 4 times of a storm, you're probably not gonna get that contracted snow plow guy here, and when you need it. Where the benefit of having somebody on staff, all you do is pick up the phone, call them, say, we need this parking lot done. I look at, sitting on other boards, I look at the cost of contracting something out, and right, wrong, or indifferent, I'm just gonna say it. It seems like a lot of contractors look at a government entity as a cash cow, for no better term. I might be out of the way of what prices cost today, but I just think it's so ridiculous. Some of the prices I see on different things for getting something done. You lose the control you got if you've got a full-time person. You lose that control. I'm not sure what the cost would be. I'd like to see, and I'm sure you've got a RFP ready to go out for prices. I'd like to see what that is before we make the final decision.
Well, I do need to get a posting out for someone so that we can look to see, especially I need to know what the response would be with, a part-time or a full-time. And I do know I have talked with 2 companies regarding snow, because my primary concern was we have night meetings. And so while, a company can have everything cleared and ready to go at 7 a.m., what's that going to look like at 3:30 when you're looking at a 5:30 meeting? And both of them assured me that, we can put them on call for those days specifically, we have 4 meetings a month, and then as needed, we have those calls. And they didn't feel that that would be an issue, that we could give them a call or have them as well watch the weather on those specific days. Both of them answered pretty identical to that.
The other thing I wanted to mention, that Matt had talked about, the park commission dictating what the gentleman out there does, and that might have been originally the way it was set up, but it was not building and grounds, it was the parks. Now we got one unit that's building and grounds and the park, and it's hard. I went through this, I'm probably the guy you can look at that went through all this stuff when I came, because park commission started telling the maintenance guy what he was gonna do, and I already had jobs planned for him. There was no continuity there. It was a great standoff, I guess. And the employee answers, for this employee, answers to the supervisor. And that's where, and it worked, I think it's worked well over the years. I mean, it didn't start out, it was a little bumpy on that road, but I think it's worked out well, because the person that does the maintenance knows he's got all, or she's got all the parks, plus this building. And there's somebody from this building calling up when they need something, and they might be cutting the grass. Well, the grass is not life and death if you got water flowing over here. So I think that part of it worked out well, but I guess I'm concerned if we try to contract all this stuff out, that number one, it's going to be a lot more expensive, I think, than what having a full-time maintenance person is. And second off, you're going to lose the control of having somebody to call up and come over here. Contractors, most of them haven't got enough help, so they're busier and busy, so you got an air conditioner down, you might not see the guy for a day or two.
Yeah, so when we've had an air conditioner down, I'm the one who usually calls, but that's okay, because it's pretty immediate usually. But no, in seriousness, two of the things that made me think about this more was I had met somebody who, not for a local township, but for another entity, works as, he's retired and works part-time for a grounds area type organization. And he's so well-versed as a retired engineer that he works part-time and he's extremely capable and well-versed in a lot of the items. So I think that, you know, there's a possibility for some really interesting applications. And then, again, I go back to having seen it done successfully with Garfield Township. And then when I look at what our benefits are, which can be up to easily probably $35,000 for this position, that goes a long way in contracting. And I think with contracting too, you just have to, you know, assert what you need in those items too. I think last year, we had a good experience experimenting slightly with this when we had our employee out on leave last year, because I was very concerned, someone being gone for 6 months, how that would pan out. And we had someone in for only 5 hours a week, about 5 hours a week. And we contracted out the rest, and we did just fine. And I will say that contract probably let a little to be desired in the fact that I didn't have them on the automatic notice of what the days of the meetings were. I just didn't incorporate that from the beginning, thinking they were going to be very short term. And so I think that that's easily solvable. But, you know, I had like not one complaint over that 6 months. Now, granted, 6 months isn't the entire year, and there's different seasons there. But again, that was with contract help and someone at 5 hours a week. So I guess, you know, either way, I'm happy to move forward and, you know, get this going, but would like the flexibility that if we do part-time and we're not getting the applications, then I can just go ahead and submit out the listing for the full-time without waiting for the next board meeting. Mindy?
I thought about doing them both at the same time and see what
I did think about that, and I just wondered how that would be perceived. And so I thought about kind of layering them and starting the temporary. I could write something for, you know, temporary or full-time and indicate, you know, what your preference is. I'm sorry, part-time or full-time.
Well, and I won't speak for Glenn, but Glenn and Brian Morrow and I were on the committee that basically hired Bob, and I thought we had quite a few very good candidates, and we just went with Bob because nobody else necessarily rose much above him, and he was already doing the job. But I think there are plenty of people out there that can do the job. I don't know about the part-time being as good. I really, yes, you know, if you remember, we had a bookkeeper named Dennis that did a wonderful job for us as far as I'm concerned, and did it much cheaper than what we're doing now. But he was a unique individual that had the background to handle the job. Most would not. But I think as far as this position goes, there are plenty of people out there that would be willing to do it. And I still think it just should be full-time.
So how about we'll just move forward with posting both positions and pursuing the RFPs, see what the prices are and see what the responses are, and then I'll just bring back a recommendation from there. So with that, though, would you like to approve the part-time? Because I don't have, this is not a standing job description.
Because it's been changed from the existing part-time that we,
Not really. I mean,
because we have a full-time position and a part-time position, job description, both that the board has approved.
part-time temporary and full-time. Yep, Dan is part-time temporary. So I just took one of those and morphed it into this one.
Well, if you were to hire a full-time, we had a full-time and a part-time. Is there enough work for a full-time and a part-time? That's the question. If there isn't, then it would be a temporary part-time rather than a permanent.
So one of the reasons I think that this is interesting to try to see if it works is I do think there are portions of time, like in the winter. One of the reasons we have the temporary in the summer is sometimes even not so much the workload, but it's also to help with workers' comp issues because, one person trying to do something. And we do have someone who I want to make sure they're not injured. But contract help allows you to help tailor that fluctuating difference between a time when you have very low need and a time when you have very high need. And so that's kind of where you draw in contract help.
I guess I would like to see that we maintain at a full-time and a temporary part-time. I would like to leave it the way it is.
If you can get the information, I'd like to sit down and see what the costs are for some of this, what the whole
Sure.
thing looks like.
Sure.
I mean, that's the only fair way we're gonna know. And that doesn't mean that.
But I'll post it then. What I'll post is for temporary and for full-time. And I'll see what applications I get, and I'll also put out the RFPs.
Okay.
Um,
That satisfies me. I don't know the rest of you, if you guys all agree with it or not. I can't speak for anybody but myself.
I'll make a motion to approve the job description for a part-time building and groundskeeper.
Okay, support. Further discussion? Again, this is so we have a job description to go out for if we need it, so that it
Right.
would.
It doesn't
Yeah,
necessarily mean you.
it doesn't say you're hiring one, that's right. All in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed by no? Okay, was that all ayes then? Okay, all right, so we'll move forward with that. So the direction I'm getting then from consensus is to move forward with listing it for the temporary and the permanent.
Part-time.
I'm sorry.
Full-time.
Part-time and full-time, thank you. Mental block on
It's
this.
the 22 plus 2 from last week.
The what?
When I kept saying 22 plus
Oh.
22 instead of 22 plus 2.
Oh, okay, gotcha. And then we'll get the RFP out, and we'll see what he brings back. And I actually really appreciate that direction, because I think it gives us the greatest flexibility to see which really, I mean, I've been weighing this in my own mind too, because there are things where I think, it's kind of nice having, the full-time, but then I also understand the costs, and I also understand the need is so slim at certain times of the year and much greater at other times. So,
When leaves fall at Grace,
yeah.
I mean, come on.
Yeah. And, it's something too, if the numbers do come back where it's like, okay, let's try the part-time, you know what? It's not, was that to say you can't change it in 6 months if it's just not working out? That's true, so. All right, so we'll move forward with that. I appreciate the discussion, and I appreciate all the perspectives and the direction. Also, I mentioned just a staffing update too. I have been talking with Claire and with Leslie. The three of us sat down, had a good discussion. The workload and the planning and zoning, I've been augmenting with some work that I need done, just general township that's not planning and zoning. And I am we're gonna transition Leslie into that office manager position. and just vacate the office specialist in planning and zoning. And so I wanted to let the board know about that. I've looked through the personnel manual. It kind of falls into a gray area. It's not hiring somebody new. It's transitioning someone over. The money is, soon I looked at it today and we were quite surprised. The money is like almost identical to the same of what's in the budget, within like a couple $100s. So it's very, very similar. So she's excited about it. She's positive about it. We could certainly use her to do those things and help with some of the overall things. So with that, just wanted to see if you had any input or, comments. Just wanted to update you on that.
Well, and I think it'll help with the fellow coming in.
It will, although I will say, and I shared this with, with them as well, this is not predicated on the fellow coming in. We would be doing that even right now as we stand with the current work and where it's distributed and so forth.
Because the fellow's not gonna take work. really
Exactly.
often. That department is
Right.
just gonna be focused
Right.
on things that are in addition or above and beyond
And
where we want to go with that.
And Leslie still will be doing a couple things that are planning and zoning related to like their mailings when they go out, and helping with some minutes. So, but that's just not enough for the full time. So it'll be a little bit of an adjustment. If we end up having to adjust the job description, I'll let you know and we'll bring that back. But I'm really encouraged. We had a great conversation between the three of us, and we think it's a good way to go. So,
My only concern is with someone back at that front counter. I have had conversations with you and the Election Commission for quite some time about getting a service counter, an access counter. This is the year to do it because we've got the 3 elections in 2024. With someone seated there, this board's going to have to, I guess, decide how that can happen. But right now, I've got a counter, a cabinet that I use as a counter. It doesn't work. We've done that, but I'm excited to see somebody up at that front counter again. But I do want to make sure that we keep that on the radar because we need to have a service counter. And there will be a lot of other things that, because of the changes in the law, that we'll have to look at it and kind of think outside the box too. So.
okay. All right. Well, with that, we have minutes.
Yes, and I still, because I haven't had a chance to go back and look, I do believe the way, in trying to remember, I do believe that Cook did second it, but I guess I would just like the board to, if there is nothing else in those minutes that look like that needs to be changed, to approve them with the intent that I will make the clerical correction after reviewing the meeting to know exactly who it was that made the second.
Yeah, and I just wanted to pull that because the motion would be so quirky to try to do that
Yep.
with the consent was just a little weird. So
Yeah, I
if
agree.
someone wants to make a motion to that extent,
I'll make a motion to approve the March 13th, 2023 minutes with the changes to
To reflect, it was I.
section I to reflect the second of the motion as reviewed by the clerk.
okay, is there support?
Support.
Motion by Walters, supported by M. Cortade. Any further discussion? Okay, all in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed by no? Okay, motion passes.
Do we need to approve the April 5th minutes
No,
as well?
because we just got
We'll wait
them
on
today. You
those.
haven't seen them yet.
Oh, okay. They're on here, so.
Yeah, I asked that that be removed.
Okay, sorry.
Let's see. Public comment. We have exhausted our public, so there's no public comment. Upcoming meeting dates, you have the notice of the April 25th meeting coming up that we talked about with Acme Township, and look forward to seeing you there. If there are no objections, then we stand adjourned. Have a good night, everybody.